Welcome everyone to the third Q&A lore stream on my channel. Welcome everyone, nice to have you here. I hope you can hear me and the sound is good. That is usually a main problem. I also hope everything is live and working as intended. That is also sometimes not the case. But it seems it works. Nice. How are you people doing? I hope you're doing well on this day before the Easter Sunday. And yeah, maybe a good time to have a little chat about Tolkien and his fantastic lore. And I think I already got a question like a few hours ago. Somebody wrote it in chat. Rimpy the Third, I think, is the name. I'm not 100% sure if he sounds okay. Nice, good to know. I'm not sure if he is still here. Maybe not. Maybe he is. We will probably find out. His question was, if Smeagol had met Bilbo before being called back to Mordor, would Bilbo have been probably become under the thrall of the ring had he refused to give it to Smeagol in that scenario? So I assume, maybe I don't understand the question 100% correctly, but that sounds a bit like, would Bilbo come under the thrall of the ring if he would if he had it before, or basically if we replace the possession order a bit or change it a bit to the past, then would Bilbo be summoned basically to Mordor? That's, I assume, what he means. If not, maybe somebody can correct it, but it's, I assume what he's trying to ask. I would say Bilbo was relatively unaffected by the One Ring. He still was affected, but probably not as strong as Smeagol or Smeagol, because Smeagol had it just for such a long time with him, and he also used it in the past. Bilbo rarely used it and always had it just in his pocket. Maybe in that regard he's similar to Gollum, but in that case, I would say probably not. I think he could have withstand. I mean, he was able to give up the One Ring. It's hard to say, with the help of Bilbo. So that should have worked, in my opinion. But not sure if you meant that. Maybe you mean the question a bit differently. It's a bit hard to understand. Okay, so another thing I want to maybe we should have started with this before. Or there's a little announcement. I'm not sure if I've already announced it on YouTube. I think I mentioned it on Discord. But I have it again. Do you live your own principles? I think I do. But let's just do this. I have a new artist that gave me permission to use her artwork. And that's a fantastic Jenny Dolphin. You probably have seen some of her artworks elsewhere. Can even prepare this so we can show this really great build image of Fingolfin, most likely in the Nirnais Arnödiat fighting Glaurung, or maybe in one of the appearances before, I'm not sure, but something like this. And yeah, she has a lot of art, mainly doing art about the Silmarillion. Links and stuff will be in the description of this VOD, and also should be in the description of the live stream already. She has a Patreon page and an Etsy store, so you can order art books from her if you want, stuff like this. Huge shout outs to her. Thank you for allowing me to use your work in my videos. That will happen in the future. I'm looking really forward to this, because I'm always looking for artists to use their artworks, and that is just pretty fantastic to have such a great artist. Also recently got Ted Nasmith on the boat basically and can use his artworks too, which is also fantastic because he just covers so much material from the Silmarillion, from the Lord of the Rings, and that is, in my opinion, just a really fantastic thing to have. Like, you it's kind of difficult to rely so much on film material, if that makes sense, because it's always a gray area if this is still fair use or not. And just contacting artists and get the permission is really like a huge step forward, and maybe one day I won't use any film material stuff anymore. I'm not sure. So far, film stuff never gave me any trouble, so I think I will continue using the things further. Also, yeah, do you live your life? I think I live by my own principles. So doing YouTube gives me a lot of freedom in what I do and what I like doing, especially making videos about Tolkien lore, but also a bit of gaming here and there. And so I have set principles, like, for example, only use artworks of, only artworks I have permission to use. And yeah, I would say I live by my own principles, if that is what you mean. Also, are there more questions? I mean, this is a Tolkien lore-related Q&A session here. So if anyone has something to ask or say, feel free to do so. I think also shoutouts again to Jenny Dolphin. Can do this really fast. I hope Nightbot works here. Maybe it does not work, but in theory it should work. It sometimes takes like a few seconds. Yeah, there he is. So that are the links to her gallery and her Patreon and her Etsy store. I think she has even more. I hope the links work and I pasted them correctly. Do you like the Lord of the Rings cartoon from the 70s? I think it's I would say yes, even though I don't watch it that frequently. Because, I don't know, it rarely happens that I watch it happened to watch it. It feels not outdated is the wrong word, but they're kind of special in a sense. But overall, I would say, yeah, I like them. And of course, some of the scenes from the 17th cartoon from Lord of the Rings are also in the films, were a huge inspiration for Peter Jackson, for example. I think we talked about this in the books and film references series, where I made a little comparison shot. I can't talk today. It's weird. And for example, the hobbits hiding under the tree and the Witch King in the background. That really is something that is so similar, or the Proudfoot with his foot on the table or on a chair. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's also pretty similar to the original. And of course, there's an interesting, even though it's not related to the cartoon, but Ted Nasmith also was asked to be one of the art guys behind the film, but he had to decline for some personal reasons. I'm not sure. And I feel if you see some of his art for Lord of the Rings, you also find it in the film, but that's a different topic. There was another question. Let me just read it through. What is your least favorite story arc character in the Lord of the Rings? Obviously, least is subjective to, you can still like the characters to a lesser degree. Side note, doesn't have to be evil. Least. That is really hard to say. Only in the Lord of the Rings. What could be my least favorite character? I have to think about that for a moment. Least favorite. I'm not sure. I think I can't think of anything where I say, oh, I don't really like that too much, if I'm honest. It's really good question. Maybe I come back to this in a moment. Maybe something comes up into my mind. But so far, I can't say that I didn't like anything. I think it's a pretty perfect book with pretty amazing characters. I mean, okay, maybe there's one chapter that can be a bit, especially if you read it a few times, because it's so slow paced. It's not like I don't like it, but that is the chapter where they go through the old forest. And there's like a lot of nature description. I always remember, because Tolkien's vocabulary is just so big. He has like 5 different words for brushes in the background. I have to look up those words because my vocabulary is simply not big enough to know all those different, especially when he's describing nature and tree names. I know the names in German, but I sometimes don't know the English words for it. And I remember this chapter being very heavy when it comes to looking words up. And that maybe kills a bit the flow. That doesn't mean that I don't necessarily like it, but it's definitely a thing that gets me a bit out of reading of several times. Other question. What is your theory on who the Witch King is? Oh boy, that's a tough one. I have to say, I don't have a good theory for it because we simply don't have too many names when it comes to that part of the history. There is, for example, even if he is, I mean, it can even be debated where his origin is from. Could he be also an Easterling king? Could he be like an other Manish king from that time? Because there are a lot of blank pages in the Second Age, and he was some man in the Second Age. That's all we basically know about him. He could be from Eriador, he could be from Rovanion, he could be anywhere, and I have no good guess. But considering how powerful he became and how well he seems to be at leading armies and doing things and getting stuff done, I don't know, it's really hard to say. It seems like he must be experienced in this, so he would either be from the Norse, an Easterling, maybe also from the south, or maybe it's, I don't know, Black Numenorean or from Umbar or what, I don't know. It's really hard to say. I don't have a really good theory, if I'm honest. Pretty curious. Maybe if somebody has a good theory, feel free to post it in chat. Curious. What expectation for the Amazon's long-awaited multi-season television adaptation for The Lord of the Rings? You mean the Lord of the Rings on Prime? So basically the series that plays in the Second Age? Or is that something new I don't know about? But if you mean that, my expectations are there are some good people involved, and those people have the potential to deliver something good. And I probably don't expect the best series in the world, because that's usually, not my opinion, not a healthy expectation when it comes to that. So I would say I just expect a good series that covers the Second Age, has some interesting and good lore references, and gives a good overview of what happens in this time. I hope it's really close, or as close to the books as possible, and does as little mistakes as possible. If they do mistakes, we will, of course. There are a lot of lore channels on YouTube right now that will figure those mistakes out and call them out for it. I'm pretty sure about that. Or calling out is maybe a bit strong, but maybe discuss potential mistakes and why they could have happened. I feel like, for me as a creator, it's a huge opportunity, because people will get drawn to Lord of the Rings, and that potentially means that more people watch videos on my channel and the other channels. I hope that will be the case, and that we maybe can have some good collaborations between other streamers, and maybe have like a round table and discuss the current episode. That would be pretty neat and cool. Looking forward to that. In my opinion, that stuff like this can be fun. I just hope that we keep everything to a very civil level when it comes to discussing Tolkien. But I mean, that's more my style, going into the depths, looking at the sources, and trying to explain what's going on, what different opinions could be there, because sometimes Tolkien himself changed his opinions on several topics and started writing into another direction. It's really important. Let me see, next question. Minas Tirith, Osgiliath, Minas Morgul, and Edoras are too small in the movies. The other settlements of Gondor aren't even showing. Love the movies very much, but this kind of bothers me. Okay, I can definitely see that. I know what you mean. But yeah, sometimes movie magic needs to work out. I think Minas Tirith is okay for the most part, I feel. That's pretty impressive city, I would say. Minas Morgul, yeah, we don't see too much of it. So it's just the illusion, in my opinion, could work out. Edoras, I would agree, that always felt also a bit small for my taste. And the land is so empty, there are so little towns, and so it's hinted here and there that there's more to it, but of course, yeah, it's always difficult to do this in film and portray this. Even though the overall style of Edoras I like a lot, though. But yeah, you're right, could have been a bit bigger. But it's just a detail. What was the other thing? Osgiliath, yeah, Osgiliath. Yeah, you are right. Maybe it's a bit small because that was originally the capital of Gondor, and where also I think it was called the Dome of Stars, where the Palantir was stored. That was the biggest Palantir, and I think of them all. Not sure if the Palantir on Tol Eressëa would be bigger, but yeah, really a huge place, and the heart of Gondor, which was just a gigantic realm. That's definitely true. That could have been bigger. I think still it works. It works out, in my opinion. But yeah, it's just a detail. But I can understand what you mean. I was hoping my question would be the one that makes you really think. Wait a moment. What question did you ask? Maybe I should also name the people who asked them. Oh, yeah, the question which like least. Yeah, that really made me think. It's hard to. It's a really tough question. Well, what does it mean when Gandalf says to Denethor that he too is a steward? Oh boy, I would need to look into this. For Gandalf is a steward of Middle Earth. Yeah, you could basically say it like this. He also, Gandalf's function, for example, what is it called in English? Coronation, when King Elessar becomes king, when Aragorn becomes King Elessar. That is also, he gets the crown, I think, from Gandalf, because he has this huge authority over everything, and in a way, he is also a steward over Middle Earth and tries to keep everything intact as long as Sauron is there and his mission is not completed. So in a way, yeah, that's maybe a good point. But maybe there's more to it. I would have to look deeper into the quote and read the chapter again, I guess. Make some thoughts about this. This is just out of my mind, just what I thought about it. I think the Witch King is a Black Numenorean. Yeah, I think that is I would agree, that seems a likely thing. He's powerful, the Black Numenoreans, or Numenor was powerful. As a result, that could be a good fit. I want to know what happened to the Blue Wizards. Always bothers me. Well, that Tolkien had so many different ideas with them. It's really difficult to say what is now canon, because in Lord of the Rings itself, there is only one reference that there are 5 staffs of the wizard. That's what Saruman says to Gandalf. I could try to find the quote here, but that will be. Let me just see if I can find it really quick. I'm not sure if I will. Okay, that will be difficult. In the meantime, yeah, he had different ideas in some. Yeah, that is. I suppose, and the crowns of the 7 kings, and the rods of the 5 wizards. That's the first. That's the quote. And beyond that, we only know about the wizards Gandalf, Saruman, and Radagast. But there seem to be 2 more wizards, 5 wizards that have rods at least. And later, Tolkien originally, I think, planned to include this into the appendices, mentioning the Blue Wizards, but he never did. And we only find information about them in 2 sources, to my knowledge. That is, one, the Unfinished Tales, where there's an what's it called? An essay published written by Tolkien, published by Christopher Tolkien then later, and it talks about the wizards, their origin, their mission, a bit about their nature, and so on. And the second mention, I think, is only in History of Middle-earth 12, Peoples of Middle-earth, the last book. There we also find a little bit about the Istari and a bit about Glorfindel and his later ideas, so that Glorfindel came maybe together with the Blue Wizards in the Second Age. They went to the east, Glorfindel went to Eregion, and then what happens to the Blue Wizards, we don't know. But I can understand why it bothers you. It's really mysterious. In some versions they fail and start cults, and I don't know, in the east. In some versions they succeed and prevent the east or the forces from the east outnumbering the forces of the west in the War of the Ring, and so on. So it depends how successful they are and what you consider. What is your opinion on it, or which version you like most, basically? The Wizards. I think the Witch King is a Numenorean king. Not sure if he can be a king, but maybe one of the higher lords. What happened with Radagast after the ring was destroyed? We don't know what happened with him. It's a bit when the Council of Elrond takes place. Elrond sent messengers to Radagast and wants him to invite him, but his house, Rosgobel. Wait a moment, I should maybe not talk so much and can even show you. I mean, I've prepared the art stuff in the background. I'm not sure if I have a picture of the home of Radagast, and it was empty. He was not there. So maybe I need to do some production here in the background. I mean, I have the artworks and totally forgot about this. Just talking about, there it is from, we have a beautiful picture of it from Ted Nesmith, which I can show here. Just need to find where the correct credits are there. Yeah. There we see him also standing. This is Rosgobel, I think it's pronounced. Not sure if the trilled R at the beginning could be a voiceless R. I'm not sure. I have to look into this. Possible. However, it was empty and he was never seen again. So we don't know what happened with him. Maybe he escaped. Maybe he had other things to do. But we don't hear, to my knowledge, of him ever again. Which is a bit sad, I guess. Because he did some things, at least he did right. What I imagine, he stayed in Middle-earth. Yeah, true. Totally possible. He did fail his vision. To what extent does Tolkien's language building add to the writing versus different writer just having some basics in their works? I find language building difficult for my own work, so I'm curious. That's a very good question. What does it add? I think language, how to put it? Tolkien wanted to create mythology for England. That was one of his intentions. And as a result, because he's also a philologist, a professor for philology, so basically the science of language, he has a very, very big knowledge when it comes to languages, how they develop, how they work, how words are related to each other and develop over time. And he really liked this. That was part of his work and something he had really passion for. And he transferred this into his mythology. And the reason why is this in any case important? the importance of the language of Tolkien has many nuances for what Tolkien wanted to do. The problem is that, or not the problem, but it's simply in mythology that language is very important, because how to explain it well. If you have different places and cultures, and you can reconstruct, if you understand the languages that transport those mythologies, those stories, you also start understanding the culture a bit better. And not only that, you also start to understand how cultures are connected. And Tolkien portrays this in his works so well. Maybe a good example, for people who haven't recently seen the video, I made a video about Hales and the Haladin, or the house, also known as the House of Hales, one of the houses of the Edain, very early when they came to Beleriand, the Far East, and so on. You know the story, went into the services of some of the elf lords or kings. Let me just see if I can find the picture really quick in the background. And the Haladin, that's also a complicated topic I had not the opportunity talking about in the video. Oops. Where is she? Here we have her. Just need to resize the window really quick. The Haladin and Hales had a different language than the other Edain, or a different dialect, and communicating with them was a bit strange. And also the others, including the elf, found the Haladin always a bit strange. Like they had women as warriors. That was really unusual, that you see women on the battlefield fighting and so on. That's kind of unusual. And as a result, much later, when some on the way from the Far East to Beleriand, I also have a map prepared which we can now show, which is also amazing. So the problem with this map, though, is I have a little problem here. I can't show you my mouse cursor, but I prepared something. So let's pretend somewhere here, where the arrow is where men awoke. Maybe more to the north or south. I don't know. Maybe more to the east. Very far in the east, and they wandered all the way. Where is it? Here. To the Blue Mountains. That's a really long distance here, as you can see. And some of them settled here on the way, in below Eriador. And the rest of the Haladin, or the House of Hales, went further to Beleriand and settled somewhere in Brethil. That is this little place here, this wood here. However, much later in the Second Age, I also have a Second Age map, which is absolutely fantastic. I'm really well prepared this time with maps. And in the Second Age, we have an interesting circumstance that, you can't see it down here, so I maybe have to remove it. So we have Numenor down here. And when they came again to Middle-earth, they found the Haladin, or the related folks, and they did not recognize them as their own king, as also Edain, because they had a different language. They assumed that if they are related, their language should be identical. That is not the case, though, or that was not the case. And so they thought, okay, these are not one of our people, so we have nothing to do with them. And as a result, they drove them out of this region here. And some of them later lived here, and that is where the Dunelandings live. So some parts of the House of Hales is related to the Dunelandings, and the Dunelandings hated the Numenoreans for destroying the woods here, and for kicking them out, and for killing them, for fighting them, because Numenor was just far ahead. They were so advanced, they had no chance against Numenor, and never liked them. And as a result, they later had a conflict with Rohan, which is here, and they also at some point hold the dune landings hold Isengard, which is here at the bottom of the Misty Mountains, and you see how language it can be a game changer here, and how Tolkien develops his history, his lore, just with a simple detail. They went back from Middle Earth, from the islands, the Numenoreans, and did not recognize them as their kin. While, for example, the Norsemen, they are related to the house of Marach, most likely, and their languages were closely related. And so they understood them when they talked to them and thought, okay, they are not Numenoreans, but they speak a similar or related language, like a dialect of our language. We must be related, we must be brothers. And so they saw them as their brothers. And they, of course, did not kill them or drove them out, the Norsemen. Also, the map is a bit cut. We don't have the White Mountains. We can fix this in future streams, even though I could fix it here too. Whatever. So you see how it's a really difficult question to answer, but you see how this detail of different languages also can reflect relationships between different cultures. For example, if we look at German, my native language, and English, these languages sound very different, but if you look at the words, you notice how similar they often are. And you notice, for example, the sun is shining. In German, it's die Sonne scheint. Shining, shined, it's pretty similar. You notice we must be related in some case. There must be some coincidence. And Tolkien uses this also for his world building because he knows how important these connections are. That is a really fascinating detail here. And yeah, it's just so amazing how Tolkien manages to put this together, and how important language development can be and how fascinating it can be. And it makes just the world feel more alive. I don't think that not everyone is able, there are people that can write really good stories, but maybe they're not able to transform or to build this amount of detail when it comes to language, cultural development, and how cultures are related, and then the elves split it up there, and the one part went there and one part went there, and then the languages develop differently, and so on. That it's a fascinating detail, and it makes the world feel more alive. Gives also opportunity to expand on it and write future stories, like the conflict of the Harles having the house of Harles having a different language, and later being not recognized by the Numenorean as their kin. That is, a good opportunity, a good setup for future conflicts, for future stories. And as a result, you just see how this can pile up. But I don't think not everyone can do this to this degree, because Tolkien was a professor for philology. He had a vast knowledge of this development, and he reflected what we see in Europe. Like I said, the example, there are many examples how mythology can be connected, even very weird ones. For example, the name Zeus the roots of this name is related to Tyr, the Norse god of, I guess, war. And so there was, thank you, much appreciated, Grumpy Roach, for your membership. Thank you for the support. Let me just finish the sentence. That Tyr and Zeus are related, and there is a theory, even though many people who have really knowledge about this, not me, I'm not the most knowledgeable person when it comes to Norse mythology, have a theory that maybe in the past, like long in the past, Zeus and Tyr were the same character, were the same god, and maybe Tyr was once basically the chief of the gods pantheon of. Even though Norse mythology, the pantheon is a bit more complicated, but you know what I mean. He could have been instead of Odin. However, there are other evidences, and then we now see how complex this topic is. For example, if we look at names of places, of old places and mentions in texts and so on, you notice that the name Tyr isn't appearing that often. But, for example, Thor and Odin are much more present in names for places as part of them. And as a result, it can be assumed that if the name hasn't changed all of a sudden but developed, that maybe that was not the case. And maybe some other strange circumstances led to Zeus having the same, or have the root of the name Zeus is from the Greek mythology, having the same root as the name of Tyr. That is really fascinating stuff like this. And Tolkien knew about details like these and tried to probably build upon. And it can be pretty fascinating, but yeah, it's just that complex. Like, it makes, of course, totally sense if that place names reflect what is in your mythology, what is in your culture, and so on. That there are stories to all of this. And Tolkien was pretty good at doing this. I think imitating this is just really difficult. On the other side, Tolkien also did this for decades or centuries, not decades, I said for really decades, for half a century, or more than half a century, his whole life. I think his earliest writings are from, 1916 or something, and his latest one are from the 70s. So it's just a very huge time span that he worked on this mythology. It's really vast. But I hope, sorry, I'm drifting a bit away from your question, but I hope maybe I could answer. It's a really difficult to answer question, but I think it can be worth it, but it's probably very difficult, and you have to be careful to not get lost in details, because Tolkien, his lifetime was simply not enough to finish the Silmarillion himself. And if we look at how things worked out and how much Tolkien developed in the background, we have like 4 versions of some of the stories that are in parts different or sometimes contradict each other. And that is kind of interesting. That it's also the case for mythology, that there also we find text, and even though the texts are about a character with the same name and the stories are somewhat similar, sometimes the sources contradict each other because they were written by different people in different regions. I think there are 3 versions of, what was he called? I think Hegi or something like this, like a figure from the Norse mythology. I had to look this up, don't know it right now, but in a weird way, Tolkien emulated this by accident, and especially through Christopher Tolkien publishing all those drafts and notes and different versions of his essays and so on, that were just work in progress. And as a result, we actually have a kind of mythology that emulates real mythology or simulates how it works. And as you can see, writing multiple versions of everything and never and then connecting everything, it's just massive work. So yeah, maybe we move on to another question. But this is a really fascinating topic. I could definitely go on for a while. Maybe should dedicate a video to this at one point, I feel. It's a topic. It's a really good question, though. Thank you for that. Then, would you agree Galadriel was the most powerful elf living during the Third Age? Her struggle with her Fëanor-style ambitions versus returning to Aman has always intrigued me. Well, that's also a tough question. Did you know was the most powerful? I mean, it always depends on how you define power. That is an important thing. I would say, in a weird way, in theory, when it comes to founding a realm, maybe even gathering armies, I would say that Elrond could be as powerful as Galadriel in that regard. He could have claimed kingship. Just imagine if he would rule Lindon and Rivendell, and what a huge realm Elrond could have ruled if he really wanted. He was Gil-galad suggested that he would become the next High King of the Noldor, in Middle-earth at least. And in that way, you definitely can't overlook this, even though he did not. And Galadriel could have tried to become queen. Possible, so High Queen of the Noldor, and maybe have a similar stance on that. So it's difficult to say. I would agree. She's definitely one of the most powerful elves. She's the most powerful elf, the one most powerful elf. That's really hard to say, in my opinion. But she could be, yes. So a clear maybe. A clear maybe. Definitely when it comes, though, to her fairness, to the power, I would say, yeah, she was probably the most powerful elf in that regard, that she's one of the few High Elven Lord well respected, having her own realm, having one of the 3 Elven Rings of Power. This alone is huge in of itself. And she has seen the 2 trees of Valinor, which is different for example, Elrond or for Círdan, but not for Gandalf, but he's not an elf, so he of course doesn't count. But the only other elf I could think of would be Glorfindel. That would be also one, but Glorfindel had no realm. He was just a guest and well respected, of course, but he could have not just become king of the Noldor. That's different for Galadriel and Elrond. In that regard, you can make an argument for Galadriel and for Elrond, but of course, when it comes to, let's say, if you just define power as who can slay the most orcs, then maybe Glorfindel probably wins. You could say that. Maybe Elrond could win too. Not sure about Círdan, but yeah. Those were also very powerful. But yeah, probably. Okay, another comment on we discussed the size of the cities a moment ago, if they were well portrayed in the films. Yeah, the cities work fine in the movies and they did a very good job, but I see cities of Numenor as very grand and almost mythical in my head. I may be wrong, though it's just my opinion. Yeah, I definitely understand where I'm coming from. I can totally understand that if you hear Gondor and maybe Arnor and you just expect huge cities and so on, yeah. I totally see this. So somebody said like the Peter Jackson films are a bit like as if Lord of the Rings was Disneyland. So you can just walk from one place to another and just look over there, while in truth everything would be much, much bigger. So yeah, definitely a point. You have definitely a point there. Is there a scene you would love to see brought to life in the upcoming Amazon series? From the Second Age? Yeah, I'm maybe a bit, because I spent a bit of time for the Harles video and the Haladin, and did a lot of research about the early Edain, and a lot of it is not in the video. I could have made the video probably twice as long, and it would just scratch the surface. It's just such a huge topic, the early Edain and what they did and so on. Always wanted to make a history of men video, but that would be like a, I don't know, 8-hour-long video. I feel so probably have to split it in multiple parts. However, yeah, I would like to see the conflict when the Numenoreans, who are always portrayed as like gods or demigods coming from the island to Middle Earth, and people are just blown away by, okay, they must be like Maiar or something, because they are just so ahead and usually portrayed as the good guys. There's a huge potential. Even the early Numenoreans, seen as some kind of the bad guys, coming into the woods of Middle Earth, like Eriador and the woods below it, which name I always forget. Let me just check it. Minhiriath, I think it's called. They're always coming there and just killing the people. They probably did nothing wrong there. They just lived there. But the Numenor needed the wood, wanted to place a settlement. They were in the way, and they just pushed them away, and they didn't accept them as their kin. I think that is an interesting conflict. I would like to see that in the series, but not sure if we will get this. I'm really not sure what we talked about, I had in the last podcast episode with Men of the West and Nerd of the Rings, we talked a bit about this what they expect from the series, what they will cover. I'm not sure if it was inside the live stream or in the dialogue before we had in the conversation. I think it was in the live stream though. And I think both of them, especially Man of the West, had a very interesting idea which season covers what part of the Second Age. But yeah, back to your question, yeah, that's what I would like to see most. I also want to see Umbar, which will definitely play a role in this series. I can't imagine it won't. For people wondering where Umbar is, here it is, down there in the south. And that is just like, also the Numenoreans were there. It's not clear if the Numenoreans created the havens of Umbar or not. That is, I always understand it like this, but one time I looked further into this and found out that, yeah, you can definitely interpret this differently. I don't have a good screenshot. Do I have a screenshot? Artwork of Umbar? I don't think so. No, I don't have one, sadly. So can only show it you on the map. Only have a film screenshot, which I probably needed to from the Corsairs of Umbar from the Return of the King film. But yeah, that's also a thing I want to see. What do you think at the Blue Wizard phase? Definitely they had to deal with the Easterlings, and Sauron's influence over the Easterlings in the West, and that's what they tried to find him. I'm not sure if I dreamed this, if this was like in a fictional thing, like in a video game, Shadow of Mordor or something, or if it was actually in the books. I can't remember it. Haven't read the details on the Blue Wizard for quite some time. At least this detail I did not stumble upon. I think there was the idea that when Isildur cut the one ring from Sauron's hand with a finger, and Sauron's spirit leaves his body, he escapes into the east. And I think there was I'm not sure if it's a mention or a theory that the Blue Wizards tried to find him and take him out, basically. But as we know, Sauron came later back, and he had strong allies in the east, so they did not succeed with this. So I assume it was like a fiction somewhere, because I can't remember where it would be found. Maybe somebody in chat knows. It would be great. If somebody knows, let me know. But I probably have to move it from us. Isn't it kind of blasphemous for a Catholic to write a new book of Genesis? There was always a huge discussion with Tolkien and how it works. Tolkien really tried to make his works compatible with his faith, and went into a lot of things there, and a lot of trouble doing this. So I would say no. Definitely not. I mean, he went with it very respectful. The Valar are rarely called gods in his world. They always, we usually call the powers or something, and even I think Valar also translates into that. And there's one god, Eru, and he rules everything. He's the creator, and so on. So he tried to make this somewhat compatible. I had to drink something really quick. Yeah. So I personally don't think so, no. He did not want to replace Genesis or the Bible. He just wanted to create a mythology, culture, which is a very basically cultural footprint, if you want, for England at some point. Then later he just started writing his stories. The Hobbit was really successful, and he maybe wrote it with his children in mind, to have something to read to them and be a bit creative. And he found a publisher for it, and it was pretty successful, and they asked him to make a sequel. Then he started writing Lord of the Rings, and in the background worked on this mythology further, and the Lord of the Rings became part of the mythology, and the Hobbit originally was also part of it, but he had it not far enough, so he disconnected it a bit again from his Silmarillion, from his mythology. And when the Lord of the Rings was finished, or almost finished, he had to bring the Hobbit back into his mythology and just change a few things. That's basically the outline how it works. Also, what is south of Harad? That's a really good question. Can I show stuff to you? So if we look at this here, no, that's the wrong map. Also don't need the arrow, right? We can move it down here. This is like a first age map with Beleriand on it. So it's usually the west coast. The west coast later ends here. And the other land west of it is destroyed, for people who don't know. Yeah, so Harad is here, very far down into the south. Here's Mordor later. And what is south of it? Basically, we don't know. There are, I think, some maps and ideas and some hints that there may be some mountains here and there. The only thing we know, and I don't have this prepared, so I can't show it to you, there's another continent, the Darklands, and the theory is, or there's a mention that Ungoliant, the mother of Shelob, escaped there and is hiding there, maybe devouring herself because she's this entity of darkness, basically like a black hole. That's how I imagine her. She's like took the form of a spider, but she's not really a spider. She's like a very powerful entity that devours everything, and especially even light, and is always hungry. And because there's not enough for her, she starts devouring herself. So that's a story about her. However, yeah, there's a continent, and what's on it, we don't know. Most writings and information we have is just Middle Earth and a bit of Aman. All the other continents we just have very, very little knowledge about. So sorry for Africa, that's a good answer. But yeah, that's what's going on there. We simply don't know. Both Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit books are supposed to be written by the Hobbits. How much of it would be exaggerated by them, and how much truth would they really hold? That's a fantastic question, really hard to answer though. So Tolkien worked at some point. We know there's the first edition of The Hobbit from 1937 published there, and then there's a second edition from 1951. And in the Lord of the Rings, we get the hint that the 1937 version is what Bilbo told everything to get away a little bit better and hide some details. He basically lied about a few details in riddles in the dark. So where he had the riddle game with Gollum, and he said that he won the ring, but in truth it's a bit different, because in the second edition, which seems to be the story that actually happened, is that Gollum did never bet the One Ring. The bet was always, okay, I show you the exit of this cave system to get out of here. And on the way out, then Bilbo won, and on the way out, Gollum figured out, wait, what does he have in his pocket? And of course, it's the One Ring. But then it was already too late, and Bilbo put on the One Ring and escaped. That's the story. But in the original version, the one ring was the magic ring that makes you invisible, which was, of course, at that time not the One Ring. It wasn't invented at that point. Was a bet for him, and Gollum couldn't find it, so he said, what can I else do? Maybe show me the exit instead. Okay, and then that happens, and then Gollum, of course, said, okay, what does he have in his pocket? Oh, he has a ring, and gets angry at him and calls him a thief, which is kind of true. And yeah, you see how this is, of course, very different. Then Tolkien also worked in 1966 on another version of The Hobbit with some more changes. And I think he also worked on a version, I'm not sure if it's part of the 1966 version or a parallel project, but like The Hobbit from the perspective of Gandalf. And there Bilbo doesn't get away too well in some places. it seems. I have not looked too deep into this. This is, if you are interested, you can find this, or more information about this. It's published in a book called The History of the Hobbit by, gonna read it from here. I always forget the name. Is it Redfield? No, not sure. I'm very bad with names sometimes. Let me just get up. John D. Radcliffe, that's the name. And yeah, he wrote this and goes into some detail there. I have to. I briefly read over this, but I'm not too deeply into the history of the Hobbit yet. It's a project of the future, but it's a fantastic book. I can recommend it. Wait a moment. I'm also starting where was I? How much truth is there? Yeah, so probably not. It's subjective. That is always part of the idea of Tolkien, that it's subjective and written by those. And you see that things can be quite different. This example just shows it. Oh, heard you answer the question, mate. I meant, would Bilbo be more affected by the ring had he chosen to refuse giving it to... Well, didn't he choose to refuse to give it to Smeagol? But yeah, I know what you mean, probably. I guess every deed and everything you do with a ring affects you more, especially if you go basically in the wrong direction, if you know what I mean. Also, no problem. Happy I could help out a bit. Okay, next question. How would Barad-dûr be from inside? Sauron's lair in the tower. Sauron stayed for decades inside it. I wonder how did the structure look like? Wait, do we have probably some artwork of Barad-dûr? Fantastic question, but sadly, you can already spoil. It's hard to answer. Could swear I found a cool artwork of Barad-dûr, but I can't see it right now. Oh, that could be a reason why it doesn't work. It's not sorted by name. That's not helpful. Balrog, no. Where was... I'm not sure if I have something of Barad-dûr available. But yeah, I think we don't know too much about it. I have to admit, there was like a discussion about the size of this place. But I think there's not much... I can't remember where you find the information or don't have the numbers in check. I think it's rarely described. In most portrayals we find of it, it's black, so I assume there must be a hint that it's black, maybe similar to the tower to Orthanc in Isengard, also a black tower, and we have the outer wall of Minas Tirith was also in like a black stone that was nearly indestructible. I assume Sauron could have a similar technology when he built it, and it also was bound to the One Ring. So as long as the One Ring was there, the foundations of Barad-dûr could not be destroyed. That's what we could find out about this. That's how it exactly worked inside. I think we don't really know. I assume, yeah, he's probably on top of the tower or somewhere inside. And there are a lot of things going on and a lot of logistics, maybe tunnels. There's the idea that there may be forges and that there's a lava stream from Mount Doom towards it. Like we can find little details in the description of Mordor here and there, but overall, I think that is all there is. Maybe somebody knows more. I need to move on a bit. It's really, as I lose track of what's going on. Okay, that was the truth question. How would Barad-dûr? Yeah, I'm a bit sad that I can't answer this in more detail, but I simply don't know. I also wished I would find the artwork. I could swear there was like an artwork of it somewhere. I think I found something. At least I can show you something. Oh, that was the wrong thing there. Let me just go back here. Have to find. Oh, I did a terrible mistake. Rangers. Yeah, I need to find the name. Naming is not ideal for this. It's by again by Ted Nasmith. Make it a bit smaller or something like this. So there we have Orodruin, the Mount Doom in the background, and there also the ruins of Barad-dûr after Sauron was defeated. And we see them standing there. No, what happened to Sam and Frodo there? Really cool artwork by Ted Nasmith. Shout out to this fantastic artist too. And yeah, there was maybe a bridge to there, and you see these lava streams going there. In Lord of the Rings, the films, it looked a bit like maybe he used it to forge things, and that's in my opinion a good theory. But who knows? Thor is also Thursday. Yeah, exactly. The names of the days is a good example. Tuesday is Thursday. Thursday is Thursday, and what else do we have? Freya's Day, Friday. Saturday, I think, is related to Roman mythology, to Saturn. Let me think. Oh, I think there was another one that wasn't that obvious. I don't know. Something like this. Yeah, sure. Also, you see how this mythology has footprints in stuff like day names, place names, a lot of things. It influenced in the culture and in the lives of people were influenced and named by it because this was a culture and was important to the people. If we just jump back to what we discussed a moment ago. Who holds the pre-Vatican II tradition that Tolkien practiced isn't blasphemous because he was writing fiction. His work is heralded by most Catholic bishops and priests. Yeah, I think there was a discussion or like a letter exchange with someone from the church. I can't remember it though. It's too long ago that I read this. Literally, I don't know, 6 years or so. I think I read that a bit into this. Yeah. He was definitely a devout Christian. That's totally true. I'm not an expert on the Catholic faith and liturgy and so on. Makes sense. I want to see a nice, good Gil-galad. True, yeah. I can understand it. Also, welcome, Gil-galad. Nice to have you here. Oh, Grumpy Roach. Again, shoutouts to you for the subscription, or whatever it's called here on YouTube. Thank you, man. Much appreciated. I hope you liked it. I'm a huge fan of the uni cheese, or cheesy corn, or whatever I called it here. I really like that one, because when I play on Twitch a bit and we play games, I tend to sometimes use the power or unleash the powers of cheese and to beat like a boss or a difficult part, or just because I can. I felt like, yeah, we needed like a cheese emoji for it. I felt that I really like it. Frogger style Frodo's Travels to Mordor game. That would be funny. Good old Froggers. Are the only flat Earth I can accept. I see this. Were the dwarves more advanced technology-wise than the other races because they are so industrial-minded. I think in some areas they might have been. It's always like a mysterium. I just read a bit into, as you know, I'm working on the Elrond video. And I read that the elves in Rivendell and Elrond basically, what do you call it? Not tended the streets. Maintained is a word, I think. Maintained the streets in the surroundings. And the author comments on this that it's it's kind of weird to imagine that elves maintain streets. Like, they usually don't really use streets, you know how the elves are. And, like, how does this look? And he had the theory that they might have hired dwarves to do so. But that would also mean that they had a good relationship with the dwarves, and it was, of course, always a bit difficult and so on. But there's some things you can see. And the elves need metal for what they are doing. How do the elves get metal? Can you see an elf working in a mine? That must have been the worst experience for elves imaginable. So I assume they always got metal. How did they get metal? Where did they find it? It's always like a little mystery question, because if you think of elves, you don't see them working in a mine, I think. That's not the first image comes to your mind. And I guess having the dwarf there, maybe they had some trading going with the dwarves. So in that sense, I guess in this direction, when it comes to mining, getting metal, and all this, dwarves were really important for the overall how Middle-earth worked. That is, of course, metal is needed for their warfare and so on. How did they get metal in Aman though? Because they also got weapons and armor, maybe through Aule. It's simply hard to imagine how they get the resources to build armor, to make armor, and so I can see elves smithing and forging stuff, but like working in a mine to mine their metal, it's unusual. Maybe they have some because the world is so young. Maybe there are some metal. What is it called in mining? The thing in mining where the metal is in German, it would be Ader, Metallader or something like this. Not a vein mineral. Yeah, a vein. I think it's the same. It's just the English word for Ader, right? Could be. Not sure. Not a native speaker. Not an expert on names for mining stuff. So maybe it was on the surface, and they did not have to dig into a mountain or something to go below the earth to get the metal at some point. Maybe that's how they got it. Simply don't see elves working below the earth. That must be a terrible experience for them. However, to come back to the question, were the dwarves, I think in some areas they must have been pretty advanced, because if you have built like cities under mountains, you need like you need like what is it called, vents for air. You need what is it called, an infrastructure for water, for transport, for getting food, for getting where do you put all the stone inside it, because they have to carve out things. They have to connect everything. They had built streets and so on. It was pretty advanced in that regard. So I think in certain areas the dwarves were definitely pretty advanced, but probably not in all areas, I guess, because there's just very different ideas and things that you can advance with. Like if you want to understand history, understanding language, as we had this earlier, can be pretty important. And maybe, of course, the dwarves had a good understanding of language because they always learned other languages, but just as an example, which is a very different art from learning how to build an engine or to mine or to build cities, infrastructure, like architecture and so on. There's huge differences in that. as I guess in some areas the elves were far more advanced. But if you look at what the dwarves were able to forge, if you look at Telchar, he forged, for example, the helmet of the dragon helmet of Dorlumin, I think it was called, and he forged Narsil, and he forged what is it called? Not Angrist. Yeah, Angrist is called, the dagger that Beren used to get out the Silmaril of the crown of Morgoth, which was the possession of one of Fëanor's son, I think, before. So very powerful swords and items, especially this helmet, which basically made you almost invulnerable to some degree. It was kind of magical, and also Narsil seems to be a very, very powerful sword that even could hurt Sauron in a weak form. I think not all weapons can just simply hurt a Maiar when he has full power and has a one ring. So yeah, they also were pretty advanced, but I think Tolkien doesn't explain too much on this, so it's really hard to say. It's just hinted here and there, and you can make some theories, but yeah, I agree, it would be pretty advanced. Is Sauron's power decreasing from First Age to Second Age before the creation of the ring? No, I wouldn't say so. I think he just changed how his power works with those rings, because he had a certain plan. Sauron's plan is always to basically rule over Middle-earth. Oh, nice. How is your name pronounced? Is it Gigi? Is it Gigi or something like this? Always wondered. But welcome to the stream. Nice to have you here. The grandchildren making me crazy. Yeah, that's grandkids sometimes can do this, I think. But still nice to have them, I think. Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah, of course. Wodan's Day. That's the other thing I mean. Yeah. Or Onsdag. Yeah, Wednesday. Exactly. That's Odin's Day. Yeah, that was the one I meant. Thank you for the reminder. From the First Age. Yeah, I remember now what I was talking about a moment ago. So, Mr. Sauron, I think when he forged the ring, he was pretty much almost on the. It's GG. Okay, nice. Or maybe I'm still wrong. I love them kids. Yeah. What did I say? Sauron, of course. It's hard to say what his power did. I assume. I mean, when he forged the one ring and the other rings were forged, he was almost able to conquer all Middle-earth. It was just the Numenoreans that were too much for him to handle. And if the Numenoreans would not have come, he would have conquered Middle-earth at that point. So, in that regard, I wouldn't say it was declining before that, but he just made a good move there, I would say, and changed things up. And the idea behind the One Ring is to dominate all the other rings. Yeah, that's why on it is written, one ring to rule them all. It's a ring to rule the other rings. And he was able to sneak in those rings in the realm of the elves, in one of the big realms of the elves, and try to control them. Yeah, mineral vein is the correct term. Yeah, probably. It could be related. I'm not sure where the German word and where vein comes from. I just noticed that Ada and Arda sound pretty similar. I mean, you could look it up if you want. People are interested in this. So vein, Middle English. Okay, it has a Latin origin, vein. That's what I assumed. Let's see what Ada has to offer. Yeah, that is the Germanic word, it seems. Interesting. Let me just see what you wrote. The other word also, maybe it could be also Latin. I'm not sure. Sometimes this is because in Arteria is also used in German for vein or Ader. But because it's a more medical term, I assume it would have Latin roots. It would be unusual to medical terms in German usually have Latin roots. Let me just see where you wrote it. Okay, I lost the... there it is. Should not switch too much between English and German because it confuses me greatly. No, it's a Latin word that came into English from French, but it's arteria, Latin. It's with the same name. It came into Latin from Greek actually. That's interesting. So here we have it. It's a Greek word. Vein is from the Latin word, and Ader is the Germanic word. Okay, now we covered it all. Where was I? We talked about there was a power of Sauron decreasing. So I don't think so. It was increasing. I would say he made the right moves with One Ring, and he was really in a good spot at that time. That's how I would see it. Sexiest Hobbit. That's a difficult one. Like total in general from the film. I could always understand why Sam fall in love with Rosie. But in general, I know that they're all handsome hobbits, I would say. If a Valar has the power to fight against Morgoth, why don't they do that earlier? That's a good question. Well, they do it earlier. There is the it's a very good question, but it's complex to answer. There's not a lot of nuances to it. They do it actually. There is a war called the War for Sake of the Elves, and in this war happens when the elves awake, and at that point, when the elves awake the first time, they notice that Melkor is trying to influence them, to bring them to the dark side, basically, and doing terrible things there. We have this theory that orcs actually have their origin to the elves. That's a very complex topic. Tolkien changed his mind later on this, and so on. However, they wanted, okay, we have to stop this. We don't want Melkor corrupting the elves. So what are they doing is a war against Morgoth. And the elves were not participating in this. It was just the Valar coming for Morgoth. And they came for him, they chained him with the chain called Angainor, I think was the name. I would have to look this up. I really rarely use the chaining. Yeah, Angainor is, I think, the name of it. It's a Quenya name. Contains Anga, means iron, and I think it was forged out of his crown, and they used it as a collar, and they chained him. And Tulkas basically can't be bested in single combat, not even by Morgoth. And with the power all together, they captured him, and then they put him into prison, basically into Mandos halls. And Mandos is so powerful in this halls that not even Melkor, who is the most powerful Valar, can escape if Mandos does not want that. So he was trapped there for 3 ages. We can read in the Silmarillion. An age in this context is around 1,000 years. Maybe. Let's not go into that territory. Could be more. Because, yeah, ages in the year that is Years of the Trees, complex topic. Let's not go into that territory and into Valiant years and how long Valiant years can be. Most likely they're around 1,000 years is an age. He was trapped for 3,000 years as a result. And solar years. And then, at some point, I think he begged for mercy, something like this. And even though most, or some of the, I'm not sure if it was most, some of the Valar, maybe I have an image of Morgoth, were against this idea to set this guy free again, ever. Yeah, we have one from Danny Dolphin here available. Show this in the background, just have to switch things out. The last image of Halis was by Sara Morello art. Also shoutouts to her for allowing me to use her fantastic artwork. It's rare that somebody draws Halis. Yeah. And they trapped him there, then he begged for mercy, and they set him free again. Because Manwë had pity with his brother. It needs to be mentioned that Melkor is a brother of Manwë. And some others, I think probably Tulkas and Orome probably too, and so on, were against letting him go ever. Probably a bad idea. But he said he would become a better Valar and so on. Yeah, we know the story what happens. Of course, nothing of this happens. Yeah, Tulkas was not amused. He was not happy with his decision, and he had a good reason for that. But so they set them free. But as the question, of course, was, what do you think, or why do you think when they have the power to fight him, why didn't they do it? They did, but then he let them go. They let them go for whatever reason, and then he starts making trouble again, and the Melkor managed to bring the Noldor, at least some of them, especially Fëanor and his sons, brought distrust towards the Valar, and especially Fëanor to his half-brothers. There was even the scene, I have a picture of that too, I can show it to you in a moment, where Fëanor basically threatens his half-brother Fingolfin with a sword, with a weapon. Here it is. One moment. When we have the images, I shall use them, right? Really great picture by Jenny Dolphin. Shoutouts. And yeah, he threatens him because he thinks that he's against him. There's some conflict. I can't remember the details, if I'm honest, right now, out of my bag. And as a result, yeah, you see that Melkor was successful in that. He managed to place some distrust, and however they got along with each other better, and they talked. However, then Morgoth made his next move, or Melkor at this time he was still called, made his next move and got the Silmarils, the 3 gemstones of Fëanor, and also killed Finwë, the High King of the Noldor elves, the father of Fëanor, and as a result, Fëanor went after him and convinced all his Noldor brothers to come with him. And now the Valar said, no, don't do this. Don't go there. Don't go over to Middle-earth and try to start a war against Morgoth. That's a terrible idea. If you do so, we will ban you from Aman. Still, not all of the Noldor did this, but they did this. We have the first kinslaying, where the Teleri elves get killed because Fëanor needs their ships. And Fëanor sails over and burns the ships, and the ships do not come back, so they have to... And now the remaining Noldor were too deep into it and did not want to beg for pardon again in front of the Valar, and so decide, okay, we go over Helcaraxe, over to Middle-earth. And from that point on, they did actively go against the warnings of the Valar. They ignored all the warnings they had any chance. And from this point on, it was their decision and also them to carry the consequences. That is why the Valar, in my opinion, did not intervene here that much. Because they said, no, don't do this, it's a terrible idea, and there will be tears unnumbered. And they got tears unnumbered. But that was the consequence of their decision to go there in the first place. And only at one point where also men got involved. That is a really important part here, when men got involved. And all the story around the Silmarilli and so on, only at that point, with one of the Silmaril and the half-elves, two half-elves, Elwing and Eärendil, they managed to reach Aman and ask for help. And only then the Valar came back. And as a result, in this huge war, the War of Wrath, everything Beleriand, I can show it to you here in a moment. Beleriand, there, was completely destroyed. Completely. It was after this, in the Second Age, you see, suddenly a big part of the coastline is missing all of a sudden. That was the War of Wrath. It destroyed everything. And the Valar said from that point on, we will never, ever, most likely never, ever, intervene in such a way again so that everything gets destroyed. And yeah, Morgoth was captured and banned into the and basically banned from Earth through the doors of night into the void. And Tolkien had the idea that he might come back one day in then the apocalypse or the Ragnarök or whatever you call it will start, and he distanced himself later from this idea again, so it's not clear if it's canon or not. The Silmarillion leaves out that detail. There was like the tears unnumbered is the, I think, so-called first doom of Mandos, and then there's a second one, or it was the second one, the other is the first one, I forgot. But yeah, there was more to this doom of Mandos, if I remember correctly. That's not in the Silmarillion though, because Tolkien later distanced himself from it and so on. So yeah, complex story as always. Not a surprise, I guess. Yeah, and then what the Valar did to intervene again was they sent the Istari in the Second Age, the Blue Wizards, and Lord Findle as companion to help out a little bit and to form resistance against the Dark Lord and form a natural rebellion so that the free peoples of Middle-earth would band together and defeat Sauron by themselves without the Valar coming and destroying half of Middle-earth again. That was the plan. So, sorry for this very long answer, but in my opinion, that should answer the question. There was also things going on. There was also, what's the power? I think I overread this, right? Power of the Witch King of Angmar, why do people fear him? Maybe I skipped this question, right? Yeah, I skipped this question, sorry for that. Let me just think for a moment. The Witch King power. What is his power? That's a very good question. I have to say, I can't give you a really detailed answer. So when he was usually the one wielding the Morgul knife, I think the instances we know, it was always the Witch King who had the knife. I assume the others could have used it too. He had some magical powers, for example, in Cardolan. I can show it on the map, maybe. I might need to zoom in a bit so you can actually see what I'm talking about. Wait a moment for me. Doing this in a live situation is it's not always easy, as you can imagine. Yeah, I think that should be enough. If you can read it though, would be not interesting. No, it's not on the map, right? Whatever, I'm just... Oh, where's the arrow? There it is. So Cardolan should be somewhere... Let's here. So here somewhere is a place called Cardoland, was part of... Arnor was divided into 3 kingdoms, Arthedain, Cardolan and Rhudawer, really hard to say, and There, for example, after the Witch King in the war against Angmar, Cardolan was basically completely destroyed, and he summoned the Barrow-wight there. So it seems like he also has some necromancy power, some could you say? Sauron gave him some authority to, or help, or allowed him to, gave him the knowledge to do this, to summon like weird evil spirits that possess like old barrows. And that, I think there are multiple things. There's also mentioned, I think, that his sword glows red. We see this in the film. I think that it's a reference to the book, though. But I'm not 100% sure on this, because just sometimes memories mix in your mind. Maybe I mix something up here. But that's basically his power. He was the chief of the Nazgul, not the chief, the boss of the Nazgul. Chief, I think, is the cook, right? Or maybe you also say chief, something like this. I'm not sure. However, he was the leader of the Nazgul. As a result, he could say Nazgul 1, go there, Nazgul 2, go there, and the rest go there. That in of itself is powerful, because the Nazgul are most powerful servants of Sauron, or among those, and if they go somewhere, they can induce fear into people. So normal people can't simply fight a Nazgul, especially at night. They just fear them too much. There are very few who can, like Strider can, because he has no fear. But usually it's a very scary situation fighting the Nazgul. And he could just bring them from A to, just order them, just go there and do this. And as a result, this made him very powerful, because he had simply had the command over them. He was their commander, so to say. And he was probably a good commander that made him scary and, of course, powerful. And the fear that people had of him, of the Nazgul itself, it was just like natural. When they were not cloaked and in the night and was gathered all night, they basically had an aura of fear around them, and people just couldn't hold onto them, because they just would run away, and it's a terrible foe to fight if they have like this magical power of fear. Of course, some could resist it, those who were more powerful or had no fear, like Aragorn, but most normal people would not stand against them and just run away in fear and terror. Sexiest Hobbit, I think we talked about this. Probably, I don't know, Rose. I also think Billy Boyd as Pippin. It's a handsome Hobbit, I guess. But I'm a law expert. No, I'm not an expert, but I know the law. That is outside of my realm of expertise, I would say. Okay, Valar are so powerful. We talked about the Valar already. We talked about the origin of the word vein. We did a picture for Tolkien Reading Day, but you probably have to upload somewhere, like on some social media, like Imgur, or no, what is it called? Imager, I think it's pronounced, right? I always pronounce it German, Imgur, which could be a place in Mordor, right next to Gorgoroth Imgur. But yeah. And in a weird way, it could be true. Or I don't post it. Probably you don't have a Twitter account or something like this, but you need some space to upload it, to share it with the world. What do you think of the Watchers in Moria? People have different views on this thing. The Watcher in Moria. That's a good question too. Some I think there's a theory that they are part of the what are they called? The nameless things that Gandalf sees when he fights the Balrog and just goes down to the bottom of the Misty Mountains, basically, that the Watcher is connected to them. The problem, the reason why this can't be, or an argument against it, Gandalf, or it is stated in the text, that not even Sauron knew about those. And it seems like this Watcher was working for Sauron, or tried to get the ring. It's really difficult. It could be a servant of Sauron. If that is the case, then he would have known about the nameless things, and as a result, that can't be, because it contradicts the text, or the source, at least, the only one we have. The source could be wrong, though, but that is hard to say. So, for what, so far, or as much as we know, that would not make too much sense. What they exactly are, I have, to be honest, no idea. It must be some weird evil being that just want to get the ring bearer. And I'm not sure. I'm really not sure what this means, or where it could be from. Originally, I also thought the nameless things theory would be like a good theory, but now thinking about it, probably it's not the best. I don't have really a better one. Also, I skipped a question. Was the Numenorean military more powerful than Sauron's? I would say yes. Again, you can question the sources. That maybe we spoke about this earlier, that maybe some of the people who wrote those passages glorified the fleet of Numenor, but it is said that the fleet of Numenor that went to Aman to claim immortality was probably the most powerful military fleet there was ever. Maybe the host of the Valar or something like this, but when it comes to Middle-earth standards, that was pretty impressive what showed up. And it also was when they were at the gates of Mordor, and Sauron did not try to fight them because he probably knew not a good idea. These are really, really powerful forces that I have to deal with. So he found another way, another trick, and it seemed like he gave up and begged for mercy and got imprisoned. And as a result, he went from prisoner to advisor of the king, and that was the doom of Numenor. But yeah, I would say the military, Tolkien had once the idea to give them like airships and steam machines and guns, so make them that advanced, and he just abandoned that idea at some point. Let me just see. There's another interesting question. What are your favorite map books for Middle-earth? I have one by a nice lady, not in front of me not now, but was a female. I assume, like I said, I'm so bad with names, but I can look it up. It's probably Karen Wynne Fonstead, right? Yeah, that's the Atlas of Middle-earth, and I think that is probably the best work for maps for Middle-earth. There is one mistake, because she had not access to the material at that time when the Atlas was released. And can I show it to you here on the map? That's a fantastic question. No, I can't. I think maybe, yeah, I can in theory. Let's try it to explain. I need the arrow, because as you don't know what I'm talking about. So I can't show it to you completely. But if you see there the arrow, it's at the Sea of Rhûn. That is usually where people assume the Easterlings are living in the Third Age, and maybe later too, earlier too. This sea, and she didn't know that, she assumed back in the day when she made this, that this sea was part of a larger sea, the Sea of Helkar. That's where Cuivienen, that's where the elves awoke. I have a picture for that from Jenny Dolphin, actually. Also from Ted Nasmith, there's one. Let me see where let's see, this one, who was in front? I think Finwë was in front of it. We just look it up. Sorry for, there's so many artworks now. Really difficult to find anything. Okay, I need to search this, else I won't find it. Yeah, there it is. And she wrote in the comments, so Cuivienen is where the elves awoke. Here we see Finwë and I think his first wife Miriel, I think is her name. In the background we see Elwë, who's lonely. He finds his wife later. This is a very free interpretation of this scene, I have to admit, but I really like it. And yeah, in front we see the elf couple, Finwë and his first wife. And they awoke there, and at this Cuivienen was a bay of this large sea of Helkar. It was almost like an ocean. It was gigantic. And it probably formed because before the Years of the Trees, there were the Years of the Lamps, where two gigantic towers with, light on top of them, so basically lamps, that's why it's called that way, were in the south and in the north, lighting the world. There was no sun and moon. That was, at least in the mythology, the light source of the world. And then Melkor destroyed them, changing the original intention of the world, basically. And where these gigantic tower collapsed, there are changes in landscape. And in the south, or maybe in the north, I'm not sure to which one this is related, one of the tower collapsed and created a gigantic crater, and so some assume. And this was filled with water and became the Sea of Helkar. And then, later at some point, the water vanished. The Sea of Helkar is not seen anymore. And some assumed that Rhûn might be a leftover of the sea. Same with the Sea of Nurnen. The Sea of Nurnen is... wait, I can show it to you. That's the Sea of Nurnen in Mordor. And Nurnen is actually likely to be, it's possible to be a leftover of the Sea of Helkar. However, we find in one writing the hint that the Sea of Rhûn was also there at the time the elves did the journey. So it can't be part of the Sea of Helkar. And she assumed that would be the case, but she had not access to this information. That's why it's in. Beyond, maybe there are some few other mistakes because she didn't know things, had no access to some of the sources. She did a great job, though. It's a fantastic atlas with really, that probably inspired all maps we have about Middle-earth. So yeah, answering or mentioning this. So yeah, I would say that's the best place to go for maps, and then just look up corrections to it. So with the new material, correction that sounds like she made a mistake. She had simply not the information necessary to draw differently. It was a really good theory. Map books really confuse me because of the changing political and geographical boundaries. Yeah, that is indeed confusing at times, especially with all the background information, different sources, and so on. You have to consider really confusing stuff and really complex topic. So respect to all people who draw maps for this. Let me see, I skipped a question here. Why did Eru cause Gollum to fall into the fire? You are tough questions today. That is... So, basically it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that maybe Eru accepted, because there is a passage in The Lord of the Rings where Frodo makes Gollum swear by the One Ring, or on the One Ring. I'm not sure if it's what the correct preposition is. By, on, whatever. By the One Ring, I think it's should be correct. That he swears to not go against Frodo, his master, that he can't have the ring back. There's some detail there, and if he does, he will literally fall into a fire. I think that there's a fire part in this oath, and that is basically what happens at the end, because Gollum goes against it, and then yeah, I don't know. Gollum maneuvered himself into this corner to fall there, and then of course it was Eru who accepted this, who made him trip, falling down the lava, ending this. But this was his fate, and Gollum did a lot of decisions in his life. Gollum is an interesting creature, but he's also an evil creature, on a way. Of course, you could say life was a bit unfair to him, and you have pity for him. That's the amazing thing about this character. You know that he's really a terrible creature, but you also feel like pity for him. That's my opinion, the genius of this character, and why I think I talked about this in the last video about the Gollum game that is upcoming. And this is of course the case for this fantastic character that, yeah, it feels kind of unfair, but if you think about it, he had it coming to he worked his whole life to get to this point, to fall into the lava, if you want. In a way, if you know what I mean, it was just the point that ended his very, very long life. He lived for hundreds of years. When was Gollum born? 2600 or something? 2400. I'm really bad with numbers too. You can look it up if people want. Somebody knows in chat for sure out of his head. 2430, yeah. He was born and he died 3019, so he was almost 600 years old, 589 years. There was a little note here. Great. He had a long life. And at this point, his life ended. It was his destiny to die there. He should have been dead long ago anyway, if he would not have taken the One Ring, if he would not have hid in a cave for centuries, if he would not have tried to kill so many people. I mean, there's a mention in the books that when he left his cave to go for the One Ring, that he not only tried to kill birds and beasts and the youngs of those, so go to the nests and kill those, maybe eat them. Also, he went for cradles. That means, you know what that means. So, and men feared him, and men thought it was like a blood-hungry ghost haunting the woods. So, Gollum is, not a nice creature, but somehow you also feel bad for him. That's an interesting, or the cool thing, or the genius of Tolkien, if you want, that he managed to portray this way. Also, we are definitely one of my favorite characters in fantasy, I would say, one of the most iconic ones. But yeah, that is why he fell into the lava at the end, because he had it coming for him. That was his destiny that this would happen, and he also swore an oath that this would happen. Like, I think the oath was he would cast himself into the fire of Mount Doom or something like this. And he did not cast himself, so somebody had to help to fulfill this oath. That was Eru, if you want. I probably won't find the section here, because it's a bit more complicated. I think there are 2 parts where this is discussed in the book, but what do I know? Okay, need to catch up a little bit again, right? Tulkas he was angry. What's so fascinating about the Silmarils? Are they very powerful? Yes. So, for the elves, they are very powerful because we see everything that becomes rare in a way can become very valuable. In a way, like there's a wrong print of a stamp, and suddenly the stamp is like, I don't know, the price goes up by a factor multiple thousands, or even more. And because it's just that rare, it's unusual. And these gems were, first of all, nobody else could have made gems like these, except Fëanor. It was his masterpiece, and he was not able to recreate it. It was just artful how he created those. And in addition, they also had the light of the 2 trees of Valinor in them. And when at some point those trees did not exist anymore, and all that was left of those trees were the 2 fruits, 1 fruit from Laurelin, 1 flower from Telperion, and the 3 Silmarils. And those could have been used to restore the trees, but Fëanor did not want it because they would have been, the Valar had to undo them basically, and that was Fëanor said, I will never be able to make something like this again, and as a result he decided against giving up the Silmarils. So now that the trees are gone, this is what was left, and not only that, they were also hollowed by Varda, so that they would burn evil and so on. They were very special and powerful artifacts, and they had this mystic power, like the light of the trees of Valinor. I had the video on my channel if you are interested in this topic, where I discuss the idea that this light enables, for example, Galadriel and others to see the unseen, like to see an aspect of the world. It opens the eye, it gives you insight into a deeper foundation of, or deeper, how to call it, deeper layer of the world itself. Understand it better, see deeper. We also, we have multiple mentions of this, or a few little mentions in some half sentences, that when the light was still strong in the elves, they were much, much more powerful all of a sudden. And that was because they saw these two trees. And all that is left from the light of those trees is in these Silmarils. So the Silmarils that are on top, also hollowed by the Valar, are, of course, very valuable and also powerful artifacts. And they also work. Like, the One Ring is a good example that is somewhat similar. The One Ring is not simply a ring that makes you more powerful or invisible. It's a ring that changes the fate of the world itself. It's that powerful, just powerful on another level. And the Silmarils were that too. They also changed the fate of the world, and even more so than the One Ring. Like, that, probably the most powerful artifact there is, yes. So there's this. What you said makes a lot of thank you. That is nice to hear, that when I say something that it makes somewhat sense. That's good to hear. No Twitter, try to take a pic on phone and then copy a link. Not on YouTube channel, but the channel will not allow outside links. Yeah, that's complicated then. The Blue Wizard arrived not at the end of the Second Age. They arrived with Glorfindel, and Glorfindel arrived 1600 Second Age, so in the middle of it, around. That is when the One Ring was forged, around that time. So when, things starting to fire up in Middle-earth, basically, and conflicts were on the horizon, they arrived as the ambassadors of the Valar. And, Sauron also pretended to be an ambassador of the Valar and called himself Anatar, Lord of Gifts. And they believed him to some degree. A bit skeptical, but not skeptical enough to just kick him out. Gil-galad and Elrond and Círdan in Lindon kicked Sauron out, because Rivendell did not exist at that point. Should mention that. Rivendell was founded in the war of elves and Sauron. That happened after they were still able to put away the rings, and when Sauron forged the One Ring, so Sauron had to come for them instead of controlling them. And then at one point, Elrond could not win the battle and had to retreat, and he retreated and founded a stronghold near the Misty Mountains, and that became Rivendell. Interesting connection here. Let me just see. Do you think Denethor was influenced by Saruman, though the Palantirs, through the Palantiri they both used? Yes, he was, but he was not. Let's say Denethor's mind was somewhat weakened, or was suffering a bit. Let me see if I find something of Denethor. Nope. Denethor. Nobody drew Denethor, right? Unfortunate. Do we have a Palantiri or something? Not even that. I don't have a I don't have anything to show you right now that helps. Maybe I have Minas Tirith though. Yeah, that would work. Let me just switch pictures really quick, so it at least to some degree fits what I'm talking about. So we switch back to Ted Nasmith, of course. Oh, I forgot to switch, or whatever. Huh? Why is... No, I'm just insanely confused, but I did something in OBS that is just very strange. Here it is. Yeah, so he wrestled, he says a word, with Sauron's will, and Sauron did not overcome him, so Sauron could not dominate him, which is just a testament of the strength of will of Denethor, but still, it took his toll, and after that, he was a bit weakened, you could say, and maybe got a bit crazy due to it. And he also, having the ability to see the armies of Sauron a bit and what's going on and what's coming for him, of course, it makes you, it puts you in despair and puts you, okay, I can't win this. What am I going to do? We are all going to die. And create some kind of, I wouldn't say hopelessness, but made it. That was it. It was just difficult for him, and explains. In the film, it's a bit different. He seems from the beginning far more crazy, but he was not just a crazy person. There was a lot more to it. It's a more nuanced character in the books. But yeah, it had definitely influence on him, but he was not under control of Sauron. Definitely not. But it had its price, the Palantir, for him. Oh, no, you didn't ask. You asked influenced by Saruman, not by... I read Sauron. Okay, no, Saruman, I think, had nothing to do with the state of mind of Denethor. At least, I'm not aware of that. Sorry for misreading your question there. Just read Sauron, because it was the thing I expected that you wrote. Why is it so awesome? I wish she stuck to mountains, to the Tolkien style of mountains. Yeah, true. Her mountains look a bit weird, but still, she's very accurate in what she's doing, and I'm very thankful for her books, because it's a really, really good source on understanding where stuff is in Middle-earth. Can learn a lot from this. Why does Sauron choose Mordor and Barad-dûr as his base? That's a good question. I assume because of Mount Doom, and because it was protected against all his enemies because of the. If we go back to the map, I have the third age, the first age map. Always takes a moment because the map file is so large. It takes a moment to load in OBS, and I have to move it around. Here it is. Maybe I just reduce the size of the map again a little bit at least. That's not enough. Oh, it's just too big. It's really hard to work with this gigantic map thing. It's really big. Really huge file. Something like this maybe? Yeah, that should work. Transition. Oh, I did a mistake here. Did another mistake here. I continue. Chain of mistakes just happened in the background. One moment. Mordor. So yeah, there is Mordor on the map. You probably have already figured out, and you see these mountains surrounding it. So that's of course ideal if you want to have a huge realm which supports your armies. You have Nurnen, where you have your slaves working and produce food for them. It's also well protected. The only exit, you can only enter Mordor from here, and from here, from this side, or from the other side, but that is like a huge detour and not that easy either. As a result, that was a good selection. Then we have Mount Doom. Mount Doom was raised most likely, or we find notes about this in, I'm not sure which book. If I would have to guess, Peoples of Middle-earth or Unfinished Tales. One of those. Maybe I'm totally wrong, and it's in a totally unrelated book. Could be Morgoth Ring 2, or it could be one of the first History of Middle-earth books. I'm not sure which one. We find a note that Mount Doom, maybe it was also Lord of the Rings, I'm really not sure. And that this Mount Doom was raised by Morgoth, and it has, of course, then a connection to him. Morgoth, of course, is everywhere because he infused the world with his evil power. That is called, and the world became basically, the world itself, Arda itself, was marred through it and became like his one ring. That's why the book is called Morgoth's Ring. The world itself is his ring. And except for the oceans and water, some water, not all, but at least the oceans are pretty free from Morgoth. That is why often he never goes somewhere by ship, or why some of his servants fear water. At least that is my interpretation of it. However, having everywhere in the world this Morgoth element, and Sauron uses this element for his dark magic. Every dark magic and everything that people use is basically based on what Morgoth did to the world. That it can be found in Morgoth's Ring. And so Morgoth has always part of it. And this is a place he raised at one point for whatever reason. And it's probably that his power which is also connected to fate itself, is pretty strong there. I assume that's why it's called maybe Mount Doom, or why Tolkien came up with this idea, because it's a place where doom and fate are strong. And that is where also this powerful artifact of one ring that also changes the fate of Middle-earth is forged. And that is probably why he chose this place here. In addition, there was Shelob here in the mountains, and she protected another entrance to Ciris Ungol, and then she was like her cat. So in his imagination, it was like a mouse hole in his wall. Yeah, and sometimes a little mouse comes there, and he has a cat that prevents the mouse from getting into his house. That's why he calls Shelob his cat. At least that's how I read it. And yeah, you see, it's a pretty good place. It has this volcano, and then he builds a Barad-dûr. I think it should be here, a bit east. There's like a little mountain thing there, northeast, and there's Barad-dûr built. I hope that answers the question to the most. Yeah, exactly. It is Karen Wynn Fonstead. You have the revised edition. So there's a revised one where this is changed. It's possible. I'm not sure from when it is, or I don't know. But yeah, it's pretty good. What's the stone of Erech for when it was in Numenor? I have no idea, to be honest. I think that is a mystery. I'm not sure if there's any information on that. I'm not even sure if it is from Numenor. I know that when let me just here on the map, where is Erech? Erech is, I think, here. Should be, right? Somewhere there, around that area. You see this, there's a small river. Maybe I should make the map bigger, but it's really a hassle to make the map bigger here in OBS. And I assume that is where Isildur and his brother Anarion, I think, landed. And then where they got out of their ships and explored the area and looked to all of this, they placed this stone there called the Stone of Erech. Maybe they brought him. I'm not sure. Maybe you remember the quotes in the books better than I do right now. Maybe they built it there, or they brought it with them. I think you could be right. They might have brought it with them, but I'm not sure why they did. But it was just, I mean, my interpretation. I have, like I said, no real there's not a quote or anything on this, so this is my speculation, my theory, my own opinion. It's a sphere, so always I think being able to build something in a circle, in a perfect circle, is already showing some kind of being very advanced at what you're doing. Like if you think, how would we do this right now if we had a stone and had to make it perfectly just round, like a circle? And would probably, some of you are very good craftsmen and can do this, but I would argue it's probably more difficult than not other geometrical forms, but having a very precise geometrical form takes a lot of work. And if you take it a circle one step further, we have a sphere, and that makes things even more complicated. So just building a huge, perfectly round sphere, it's probably not that easy to do, and just a demonstration of what you are able to do, that you are pretty advanced in what you are doing. So in a sense, I assume that expresses this a little bit. That we are from Numenor, we know what we're doing, we are advanced, we have the knowledge to build this perfectly weird stone and place it here. Like, I mean, the pyramids are a good example. There are no spheres, but of course also very impressive, and people for a very long time could not believe, how did they build this, I don't know, 7,000 or whatever the date is, years ago. It's it is fascinating, and probably just some kind of statement of their civilization, a founding stone, say, yeah, we are Numenoreans in exile, and we can do this. We place this place where we set foot on this land, and this marks a spot, basically, and the founding stone of our thing. Maybe they brought it with them, I don't know, for this purpose, to say, okay, when we get out of our ships and say, okay, we will dwell here, that's where we place a stone here, which we have in our freight room. I'm not sure. That's an interesting question. This Blue Wizards we just talked about. Okay, slowly catching up. The Battle of the Five Armies, is it recorded in the book? What is the difference between the book and the movie? Yeah, the Battle of Five Armies is in the Hobbit book, of course, too. We find it. There are, multiple differences here, big and small. Maybe some people in chat can help me out a bit, more refreshing, because I have to admit, I read The Hobbit relatively rarely, and when you do this and watch the movies often, your mind starts to melt things a bit together. You know what I mean? There was definitely a huge difference. Was definitely, so the Legolas is not happening at all in the books. He's not. There's maybe one reference for Legolas, like there is a prince somewhere that could reference Legolas. Not sure about this though. And Thranduil is not called Thranduil, he's called Elven King. This is a very complex topic, because originally the Hobbit could have played in the First Age in Beleriand. Like, if you think about this a little bit and you see some differences. I just read a very interesting article or passage from the history of the Hobbit book, where it's discussed that the Arkenstone could originally be intended to be one of the Silmarils. Of course, as the stories are now, it is not one of the Silmarils. But once, when Tolkien started writing The Hobbit in the early 1930s, maybe it was one of the Silmarils. Complicated, very complex topic. Don't want to go dive into this too deep right now. Maybe I can find a picture of the Arkenstone. But that's probably a very unrelated question. So that's a big difference. I think how they Artsok is dead already. There's only his son left. what is his son's name? Something with Bulk? Let me just look it up really fast. Yeah, Bulk is his name. He is there. Arzok is already dead. He dies in. He's killed by Doin or Dine Ironfoot in the front of the east gate of Moria. So he's not around. And I think also how I think also the death of the so Hobbit spoiler, the death of Fili, Kili, and Thorin are a bit different there. Yeah, they actually happen not in the film. They happen outside on the mountain, like where Arzok is doing. He has his command shenanigans, and in the film it's a bit different. I can't fully. How was it in the books? On the battlefield, I think they are surrounded. And then I'm not sure if Fili and Kili try to defend their king and are slain in the process together. And it's, I think, only when Beorn and I'm not sure who else is coming to rescue them, but it's too late. They are simply too late, and they get slain while surrounded. Something like this. Maybe in somebody can write it in chat if he knows it a bit more precise. But there's something like this. I think also a difference. Yeah, it's in the film. I think Thorin also has Orcrist, and I think that is not the. I'm not 100% sure anymore. I think that's also different in the book. He gets Orcrist later, when he's dead, as a gift to his grave, on his grave. And every time orcs are close, it glows. There's some line like this. I remember that. Yeah, I hope these are the differences I can. So a lot of things are different. Definitely, Beorn had a big dealing in winning all of this, and the eagles came too. There was also, that is in the books too, these wereworms, I think they were called. They are mentioned, but they don't dig the tunnels to get there, I think. I like the idea, though. I think that was an interesting idea. The relationship to Gundabad, I can't remember either. Tauriel, of course, is not there, and Legolas, I already mentioned, is not there. Is there something else different in the book? Probably. There's probably some more differences. Okay, let me just... I see a lot of... I already read some names that are fascinating. Really interesting thing, I can tell. Yeah, exactly. The Blue Lizards were retconned to the Second Age. It depends on source. Like, there are some sources that say they came also in the Third Age. We have to always keep in mind that canon here is a bit blurry. But I like the version that they come into the... It's also the latest writing of Tolkien, if I remember correctly, that mentioned they come into the Second Age. That was changed. There are multiple versions of this. Let me just drink something really fast. Turns out talking for 2.5 hours straight is kind of exhausting for the voice. But we can still keep going. I really like answering questions as good as I can. And it's a lot of fun. Somebody wrote he really enjoys the stream. Thank you. Happy Wimpy the Third, is it? Much appreciated. Happy you enjoy it here. Enjoy the stream. I have so many questions after reading the summaries. Yeah, I can imagine that. It's a lot of different, especially in the Hobbit films. There's so many differences. It's really. I will at some point do also a video series on the Hobbit and compare them a bit with the films as much as possible, similar to the Lord of the Rings film and book series, which is more a book analysis series, and I probably will name this maybe a bit differently or so to get the character. We are going through the books in a lot of detail, looking at all the details, and then we look what the films did different. That's right now my approach for the series. Just as a nice addition. But we of course want to discover and explain all the lore there is and all the connections and red dots in this series, but it takes years to complete, so just Lord of the Rings, and then probably would take years to complete The Hobbit. Because The Hobbit is a complex topic. It's much shorter, but there's just, you have no idea how much. Like, if you see the, I never will forget the day when I first, when I received my copy of History of the Hobbit, and I saw, there is a book, maybe 300 pages. I did not look, and I got it, and it has like 1,300 pages or something. It's as big as The Lord of the Rings, and there's a lot of it in it. So yeah, a lot. Fascinating book. Is it recorded in the book? Yeah, we had this. Oh, yes, I see the Sea of Thun east of Dorwinion, south of Iron Hills. Yeah, Dorwinion is an interesting example. Also, a connection to the, like I said at the beginning of the stream, in case you still remember, after so much talking. I explained briefly that the Hobbit was originally planned to be part of the Silmarillion. And then you think, who could be the Elven King be? Thingol, of course. Could have been Thingol, and Thranduil also lives in a cave. Thingol lives in a cave. Could be a connection there. There's another connection. For example, I think it's Belek, some famous character in the First Age. There's also a mention of wine. I think maybe not in the Silmarillion, but in the earlier version of one of the texts. There's also a mention of Dorwinion, or wine from there, in the First Age, in the mythology itself. So also Dorwinion, which later moved then maybe from Beleriand to, let me just see where the map is. So Dorwinion should be, where's Dorwinion? Somewhere here? I'm not 100% sure where Dorwinion right now is, out of my head, but somewhere far east. Maybe here. Maybe it was more north. I'm not sure. Maybe somebody in chat knows. But yeah, around the Sea of Ruins, somewhere there must be Dorwinion. And yeah, it was moved there, but originally it could have been somewhere in Beleriand. Don't ask me where though. I'm not that far into my research, but it's definitely a topic for a future video. Gollum had Ring for 500 years, and it was before Gollum and Frodo were joined. Yeah, long time they had the ring, especially Gollum. Why do so many people, elves and dwarves, want the Arkenstone? Yeah, so if we go back to the, that's an interesting question, and the answer is also complicated. We already mentioned the references of Beleriand. So there is this king called Thingol in the First Age, and he wants the Silmarilli. Why do we want them? I forgot, but a lot of people want them because we mentioned this earlier. They are very powerful artifacts, and yeah, when Beren comes into the realm of Thingol, let me just find a nice picture. I would also want to do justice to Kimberly 80, which is a fantastic, really fantastic, also fantastic in drawing people. Which one is the right one? That's at least a big file. That's usually good. I have to make it a bit smaller here so it fits into the screen. So we have good old Thingol, the husband of Melian the Maiar. Where's Kimberly 80? There. That's him. He lived there, in Dorias. That was his realm, and he also lived in a cave made by dwarves. So they had a connection to the dwarves, and he wanted one of the. We see his you see the necklace he's wearing. That is the Nauglamir, and later one of the Silmarilli was put by the dwarves into the Nauglamir, and then it was the Nauglamir itself was made by the dwarves, and was such a beautiful necklace with gems that all of people, of course, saw value in and were fascinated by it. And elves seemed to like these gems. And then when the Silmaril came in, it was basically the crowning or combining very, very great works of that time together. Like the Silmarilli was basically the greatest work ever. One of them was put into this necklace. The Silmarilli was he got through Beren, a man who wanted to marry his daughter, who was half Maiar, half elf, but he was counted as elf. But of course, one of the fairest elven maid ever. And he said to her, okay, you can marry my daughter when you bring me one of the Silmarils, which are in the possession of Morgoth. So basically he said to him, yeah, you can marry my daughter when the hell freezes. That's basically what he said to him. And Beren had really a cool answer to this. Like something like, I did not expect that the elves gives away their daughter so cheap, or something like this. So Beren is really a cool character. I like him a lot. And he managed to get one of the Silmarils, but died in the process. However, he had, after all the Beren and Luthien story, he had this Nauglamir and a Silmaril. And if you think about this, as we discussed earlier, that in early versions, Thranduil, let's find a picture of him. Let me just, since we talked to the movies, maybe I show you a Kimberly portrait, because she has portrayed Thranduil too, the movie Thranduil though. Let me just check the image here. Thranduil was invented much later by Tolkien. So this is, of course, a very meta-narrative explanation for all of this. I sadly have a water sign. I don't have it without it, but whatever. Still great. A water mark. What is it called? I'm not sure. Yeah. So Thranduil. So he was later invented, but originally it is quite plausible that it was Thingol. And of course he had one of those, and maybe the story was intended to be very different there. So you see, it seems to be a connection there. And the reason now why in the actual story Thranduil wanted this Arkenstone, and why so many wanted it, for the dwarves it was of course a symbol of the mountain, and the mountain are the trees of Aule, the Valar of blacksmithing, or the smith of the blacksmith of the Valar, and have of course everything Aule is also dear and valuable to the dwarves, and it was basically a core or related to this, and the dwarves always wanted to be surrounded by stone and be the mountains. That was very important to their culture. We see how all this is connected. We talked about culture at the beginning of the stream. And we see here that, of course, the dwarves want this stone. And we also, maybe this stone reminded Thranduil then later also of one of the Silmaril. And he also lived in a cave, like Thingol did, because once they probably were intended to be the same character. And basically, the Hobbit was moved out of the first age, out of the Legendarium, out of the Silmarillion, into much later times, and then Tolkien had to change characters or invent new characters to fill these roles. It was pretty smart to not name the king there, so he could easily do this without changing too much. Thranduil, the name never appears in the Hobbit, not even in the second edition. However, maybe he was just reminded to, okay, this is a gem so beautiful, it could be one of the Silmarils. There are parallels between them in how they look, and if you look a bit into this, and so it's understandable that an elf king, especially one of the Sindar, Thingol was basically the first king of the Sindar elves, and Thranduil is not the king of all the Sindar elves, but he's a Sindar elf who is a king of the Wood Elves. And part of the Wood Elves is also a complicated topic. And yeah, as a result, we see these parallels, and he of course wants those too. It seems like elves have a weakness for those gems, for those stones. That's also a bit mentioned in the films, which makes it plausible, I guess. And especially the Erebor, who has, it's also important to the dwarf culture and for the royal family, if you want, of the dwarves. And as a result, these gems also have some power over the dwarves if you want. Like in the film, it's always said that who wants to be king of Erebor needs to possess the Arkenstone, the heart of the mountain, if that makes sense. And maybe I have a picture of the Arkenstone, or we talk about this. I think Ted Nesmith has drawn one of them, but I can't find it right now. Nope, I could swear there was one. However, yeah, maybe this answers the question a little bit why it's so popular. It's a classic theme that repeats itself, and originally, First Age, Thingol, the story of the Silmarilli is connected to a lot of the First Age. And maybe originally that was never intended. That's also interesting, that it's just like an accident that the Silmarilli became so popular and so interesting to so many people. However, this is reflected by this in the Third Age, and sometimes we see this with Aragorn and Arwen. They reflect, as a couple, Beren and Luthien, and even in the books, Arwen seems to have some likeliness to how to Luthien, or how people imagined how Luthien looked. And yeah, as a result, they mirror this, and this is a classical theme that Tolkien uses often, that sometimes history repeats itself or is reflected to some degree, even though the stories turn out maybe a bit differently and the details are different, but he always connects things together in his lore, which makes his book so fantastic to read. And that's the reason why we're sitting here for 3 hours or 2.5 hours discussing the lore. It's just exactly this, the amount of detail, the connecting everything, like this. It's like a complex puzzle, or like a web where everything is connected. You know what I mean? Really fascinating. And this might be an explanation, even though it's a bit meta explanation why they want the Silmarilli. But yeah, it just reflects what in the past too. That's definitely a parallel that we have here. Why is Sam so awesome? That's a good question. I don't know why he's so awesome. He's just awesome. I think in the collaboration for Tolkien Reading Day, History of the Ages made a video about Sam, which I also really liked. It was a really nice video. It explains how Sam is like the perfect friend, and how he was a bit about the design and the idea behind him. I really liked that video. So yeah, he's just the protagonist, and I guess in a way, yeah, how to say it, Sam is not very arrogant, not at all in the books. He's very, yeah, can I really do this? Or I don't think I'm the right one for this. You know what I mean? He's shy in a way. He doesn't believe in what is in himself often, and yeah, in the end turns out to be one of the most important characters in the book. Without him, as Frodo said, Frodo Baggins would not have come far without Sam. But being so polite and not, in your face basically, I'm the best. That makes him very likable. It's an extremely likable character, and maybe a lot of people can identify with him, and that's probably why he's so awesome. I also really like Sam. Yeah, I think I already mentioned that the stream is liked. I like when people like the stream. All happy that you're all here. So the Silmarillion, page 299, 1977 edition, states the Istari came to Middle-earth after or about the Mirkwood name change from the Great Green. Exactly. So that is the Silmarillion version of it. And I said there are multiple versions when they came. The problem is I would have to dig deep into Peoples of Middle-earth. That is a book where you find this note. I'm not sure if I can find this on the fly, because yeah, if I know like how the quote is worded in my mind, I can find it. Let me just see if I can find it really quick. Nope. It's relatively far down. It must be in the section about the Istari. Loudwater, the Stewards. Oh, that's also an interesting topic. I forgot about it. Let me just see if I can really find it quick. That was too far. Let me see. There should be leaders, dwarves, Valinor, Gil-galad, Year of Dread, Second Glorfindel, returned during the Second Age before the Shadowfall on Numenor, and while the Numenoreans were welcomed by the Eldar as powerful allies. Now we have to find the Istari thing. Skipping through it, I can't find it. I'm not sure how it was written. If it was mentioned here, this is the section about Glorfindel. There's one above or two above. This section is about the Istari. It might be written there. It's really, I probably can't find it this fast. I don't know the exact wording of it anymore. That would be helpful. But it's in the Peoples of Middle-earth, in the Istari section, or maybe in the Glorfindel section of it. Maybe it was below. Just see if I find it really quick. Those who know. But when sent their task, circumvent Sauron, Second Age. Yeah, among the they must have had very great influence on the history of the Second Age and Third Age in weakening and disarraying forces who would both in the Second Age and Third Age otherwise have outnumbered the West. There's the information about, I found it. The other two came much earlier at the time, probably as Glorfindel, when matters became very dangerous in the Second Age. Glorfindel was sent to aid Elrond and was, though not yet set preeminent in the war in Eriador, but the other two Istari were sent to a different purpose. Morinehtar and Romestamo. So here they have a different name. I think in other versions they are called Palando and Alatar. And then later in the Glorfindel section, we learn that Glorfindel came around 1600, but not earlier than 2200 in the Second Age. That's where you find it. Can't tell you the page number right now. Would have to get up and read get my book version of it. So yeah, there's that. We have to come back to the right with it. Exactly. Only Círdan knew that. That they or recognized them, like Gandalf and the other Istari as Istari when they arrived in Mithlond, which I can show you. Mithlond, where is it? Here, top, there's Mithlond. That's where they arrived. In the Second Age, that's a Third Age map though, but whatever. You get the point. Sorry for the little search there. I was now curious myself how it was worded. Oh no, I think I lost track of where I was. Somewhere there. Also, yeah. Supreme Pizza, thank you for the membership. Much appreciated. Thank you for the support. Hope you are enjoying the stream so far. Could answer some of your questions. Unfinished Tales has them arriving with the others, but People's very late, Peoples of Middle-earth's very late writings suggest they came over with Glorfindel. Exactly. That's what I just read. In the Unfinished Tales, there's another version of it where they arrived with the others in the Third Age. Like, it's really confusing with the Blue Wizards, and the Peoples of Middle-earth writings are. Some of the writings are really late writings from the late 60s and so on. I can't tell you out of my head when this was written and when the Unfinished Tales stuff was written, but as far as I know, the Peoples of Middle-earth notes we found were later. And there was also a difference, like in some versions they are failing their mission in the West. And as I just read, where was it? Yeah, who would both in the Second Age and Third Age otherwise have outnumbered the West. So that was not what I wanted to read. They must have had a very great influence on the history of the Second and Third Age, in the weakening and disarraying the forces of East. So, or of the East. Yeah, there's this. It's a complex topic. Saruman arrives first in the Third Age, but now he arrives after the Blue Wizards. So first the Blue Wizards arrive, and then Saruman arrives before Gandalf and Radagast in the Third Age, around the year 1000, if I remember correctly. Not sure if there's a date given for Saruman. I think he's just a bit earlier than that. And before Saruman is doing stuff in the West, he goes into the Far East. We have a good map, Third Age map, that's helpful. So I assume going to the East means meeting with the Blue Wizards. So he goes somewhere here, I don't know where exactly, somewhere here. And then he returns and does his stuff. And only later in the Third Age he takes Isengard, like a few hundred years before Lord of the Rings, I think. Because it must be a few hundred years before Rohan was already founded, and he asks, in Edoras, he asks the king if he could have the keys to Isengard, and there he learns that he has to ask Gondor for permission to do this, because Isengard was not part of Rohan, it was part of Gondor. So he had to go to Minas Tirith and ask an ancestor of Denethor II. I'm not sure which one though, because we could find out. But maybe somebody in chat knows out of his head. I'm not sure which was the ruling steward at that time. Maybe the father of Denethor II or the grandfather, I would assume. Saruman's domain, Middle Earth, Long Winter, Wizard, King. Beren was the steward. And he was, even more than grandfather. Yeah, great-grandfather. I did not expect this to, so I thought it would be closer. I can't even tell you. Great-grandfather of him. Something like this. Beren was my kind of guy. I can imagine it. I also really like him. Let me see where we was. Oh boy, I'm so far behind. You're starting to write faster. You need to write slower. I can't catch up otherwise. Where was I? Now my chat scrolled. I have to find the last thing we were talking about. Maybe I should just skip ahead so I'm back in the timeline. You have to re-ask your questions. That's probably easier than me not being on the pulse of time. Oh, Oriana's Winter. Nice to see you here. I know you from my Twitch channel. Nice that you are also here. Thank you for the support again. Really generous. Much appreciated. Nice that you found your way to the YouTube stream too. Did the elves stay after Sauron's defeat? And what about the Istari? I wonder if Radagast and the Blue Wizards left. We had a similar question earlier. And the answer is we don't know what happens to them. We simply don't know. According to, we just discussed later that the Blue Wizards were successful in the East. As a result, they could not have failed their mission and returned to Aman too, like Gandalf did, but probably from another place. It's not even clear if the blue wizards arrived in Mithlond. Maybe they arrived at a different place. Maybe they arrived in Umbar or something like this. I don't know. I think it's not mentioned where they how they entered Middle-earth. A lot of possibilities, but we don't know what happens with him. Radagast is gone. Elrond tries to find him when the Council of Elrond is, or before that, and invites him, but he's not at home in Rosgobel, so we don't know. Very unspectacular answer. We simply don't know. Now I have to here look up a bit what's going on. Blue Wizards, Unfinished Tales has arriving. Yeah, we already read this. Yeah, that was where Saruman arrived first. We answered this. The depths of the Hobbit is why I do not scold Jackson. Yeah, that's true. I mean, he also had only a few weeks to prepare it because the other director who should make the Hobbit films left the project very shortly and only had like 6 weeks of preparation time in comparison to, I don't know, 2 years or 2.5 years for The Lord of the Rings. So you definitely see the difference here in many ways. It's a wonder that the films work at all, in my opinion. It's just really fantastic that he managed to do this. I don't like a lot of the changes and some of the additions. We don't need to talk about this. I guess most people agree on that. Even though I have nothing against the actors that had to play those roles, but I felt like they could have set priorities differently. Everyone's confused. The retcon, yes. The retcon most likely happened after. No, that's complicated. The answer to this when this happens. So the Silmarillion was released. 1976, 1977. I'm really bad with dates. Sorry for almost messing up dates. But I can remember a lot of Lord of the Rings names and no others. Yeah, 77. I was right. And Tolkien was already dead at that point. So when Tolkien wrote those notes, the Silmarillion was not even published. So it published posthumously after Tolkien's death, unfortunately. And however, some of the notes, etc., that Christopher Tolkien, who completed the Silmarillion out of the notes of his father, of the texts he already wrote, he composed them together. He had to do some changes. For example, the story of Thingol is different in this Silmarillion than it was originally intended by Tolkien because it simply did not fit. There's some mistakes in it too, and so on, but overall, he just took the text that already existed from his father, and sometimes he had like 4 versions, and he decided for version number 2 because it fits best to The Lord of the Rings. That was his goal. He tried to make it fit to The Lord of the Rings because he can't change The Lord of the Rings. That was nothing he wanted to do. And Tolkien, if he would have released the Silmarillion himself, he most likely would have released a second edition of The Lord of the Rings with changes in it, like he did with The Hobbit before. It is not unlikely. However, that did not happen, so his hands were bound a bit. In addition, Christopher Tolkien himself had not access to all the sources of his father. Maybe some stuff he has not discovered yet, had not the time to work into it, etc. So just imagine you have this room full of notes and typewrites and so on with text, and some texts also were not there because there were also other authors that Tolkien had contact with that had some of the manuscripts to look over them. So Christopher Tolkien himself had not access to all the information. I can't tell you though right now out of my head if this was the case with the retconned Blue Wizard stuff. I don't know. It's very likely though. I think else Christopher would have implemented that because it does not really contradict anything. Maybe he decided against it because Eregion and the war against Sauron, that part is a big part in the Second Age, one of the biggest stories there, and maybe he did not want to fit Glorfindel into it too, and the arrival of the Blue Wizards, we don't know. Complicated topic. No, before. Yeah, exactly. Noble Athenian already answered. Yeah, exactly. Various sources. it's a complicated task. It's really impressive what Christopher Tolkien did there. And with the time he had, with the energy he had, because it's sometimes also a matter of how much energy you have to put into a project. Sometimes you just want to move on. And also sometimes you simply don't have all the information for tasks like this necessary, which was the case here, which makes it still really impressive that we have a Silmarillion. And I'm very thankful for that. And have huge respect for what he did there. Even though some people see it not as canon or said, yeah, Tolkien's Silmarillion would be different. We know, but it was his task to complete it, and he did the best he could do. With the resources, with the sources, and with the energy he had available. Can you help with this question? How do you pronounce... let's pronounce it normally, Gloin. Is it Gloin? Is it Gloin or something else? That is a complicated question. I would say you can pronounce them however you want, because it is a really difficult question, a really complicated matter here. So I have to look something up really quick to answer this question in detail. Else it's maybe easier than I think. Yeah, it is complex. No, it's not complex. It's I messed up in my mind. So all these dwarf names from The Hobbit, most of them, maybe there's some exceptions, but I think all of them are from an Edda, from the Elder Edda. And this Edda has like a text in it, and there's a list of characters, dwarfs. Let me just... it's called Dvergatal. I hope I pronounce this correctly. And this is written in Old Norse. So, in theory, because also Gandalf is, by the way, there, but there it's not pronounced Gandalf, but there's an R at the end. So it's Gandalfer, something like this. And, however, if we pronounce the names Old Norse, because that is where these names are from and taken from, and it seems in the region around Erebor and Dale and so on, people use Old Norse names. Let me just put it on the map here, because we have it. The Lonely Mountain, in case you ask where it is, that's there. That's this mountain there. It's probably hard to see, but like I said, it's difficult to zoom in. There is Esgoras, and Dale is somewhere there, close to the mountain, somewhere there. Yeah, and in this region, it seems Old Norse is not unusual. If we would go to other regions, like here in Rovanion, in the Mirkwood, we find later in the Third Age Gothic names. For example, Widomavi, something like this. It's a Gothic name. And so these are all Old Germanic languages. And if we would now assume that we maintain what I usually do in my videos, but it's debatable. If you would do this and assume that it's Old Norse, then I'm not 100% sure on Gloin though. I assume though that in Old Norse, O and I does not form a so-called diphthong. So the diphthong is when two vowels meld together into one thing. Like, for example, English, in German I know a lot of diphthongs. In English, there are also, classic, well, that's a stupid example though. I'm not sure on this one. Ruin. I think you say ruin, right? And ruin is one syllable, I think. I'm not English. Like, English is not my native language. Sometimes a bit difficult to make this up. So you and I form a diphthong. It's two vowels, so you could assume two syllables, but it's just meshed together a bit and is one. A more classic example is something like I. It's not a. Or something like this, yeah. You meld E and I together to I. Maybe you have getting through my head through words that have A and I in it. Maybe somebody in chat has a good example for it. However, I think you know what I mean. In German, you have the word Stein, which is stone in English. It's written, can put it into chat. It's easier for me taking German example. Stein. So it's one syllable. It's not Stein, which would be the pronunciation if it would be two syllables. Stein. Instead it's Stein. It meshes together. That's a diphthong. O and I assume, are no diphthongs in Old Norse. I'm not 100% sure on this. I would have to look it up. I'm not an Old Norse expert. I just briefly looked into the phonology. And if I remember correctly, it's not a diphthong. As a result, it is glo-in, because it's two syllables, not one. Gloin would be one syllable, glo-in would be two. So that is why some say it's glo-in, not gloin. It becomes more difficult with a name, for example, Thrain, or with the name Dain, because in Old Norse we have the A and have this diacritic above the A. An Old Norse long A, which would, I assume, be an A with a diacritic above, is not pronounced A but O. So Dain would actually pronounce be Doin, and Thrain or Thrain would be pronounced Throin. Something like this in Old Norse. Might have messed this up a little bit, but something like this. So you see how it's complicated. However, if you look in Appendix E, you don't find any hints on this. And even if you listen to Tolkien's reading, he's a bit inconsistent with it, which makes sense, because when you read to an audience a text, you don't want to make it more complicated for you reading than it needs to be, and which would kick you out of the flow. So maybe you anglicize all the names, and that's totally fine. It's not wrong. But yes, if you would pronounce it Old Norse, it would be Gloin. But I would say if you say Gloin, it's not wrong. It's just anglicized, if you want, to some degree. It's just, you pronounce it as if it were an English name. And if people conversed in Middle-earth in common speech, which is related to a Numenorean language, Adunaic, and the Old Edain language, and so on, complicated topic again, it's just represented by modern English or whatever language the translation of your book is. Inside the world, it's of course an own language and not modern English, but it's the language itself is basically represented by modern English. And as a result, you can of course say the names Gloin and Thrain or Shrine or however you would pronounce it as a native speaker. So yeah, and since it's not mentioned in the appendices, where there's in the appendices I have one about the pronunciation of names, but it's usually only for Elvish, and there are some mentions of the Dwarvish of Kustul and how it's pronounced. However, yes, if it, like I said, yeah, you can pronounce it also Old Norse, and then it would be Gloin, as far as I know. I would need to look up the I don't know the Old Norse diphthongs out of my head. At least not all of them. Oh, that was not smart. Let me just see if I can find it really quick. The internet sometimes is good. I'm really good at searching things, by the way. Old Norse had 3 diphthongs, and it is not one of them. A, O, and A, respectively. Yeah, it's not a diphthong then. There are only 3, it seems. And this is also a complicated topic, because how do we know how Old Norse sounded? Because people are long dead and they didn't have a language to like the international phonetic alphabet that basically writes down how things are pronounced. That is a difficult topic. You have to analyze the text. Sometimes you have rhymes, and out of the rhymes you can think, okay, if this is pronounced like this and written like this should be pronounced like this. And you can make assumptions considering existing language. Like Iceland is pretty isolated, and the language isn't 100% Old Norse, but in many areas it's still very similar to Old Norse, and it's a good source to understand how Old Norse once worked. And then you can reconstruct. It's often called reconstructed Old Norse and so on. Oh boy, that was a complicated question, even though I probably didn't intend it to be. I hope this answers your question to some degree, but yeah, this is always very difficult to answer. Love your videos. Thank you for all the research and work you do. Thank you, much appreciated. Also, hey Chris, did Tolkien ever mention Tom Bombadil outside of the Lord of the Rings books? Yeah, there is a poem collection of Tolkien. One has is it just a chapter in it, or is it called like it's the Adventures of Tom Bombadil? There are poems about him. Let's put it that way. And there are books outside of the Lord of the Rings with those poems, and yeah, that is where he mentions it. In addition, there might be outside of the Lord of the Rings in the History of Middle Earth books. There should be information about him too, and in his letters he's mentioned too. So that are the main Tolkien sources outside of the Lord of the Rings where Tom Bombadil is mentioned. So some is about the draft, how it was created. There was like in the poem, I think there's some hint, or I think in early versions of it, I'm not sure which History of Middle Earth book it is though. It should be I need to look. Oh boy, I forgot the name. What is it? Let me just look it up real fast. Lost Road, Return of the Shadow. Yeah, that's the name. I also wanted to say that. I think it's in Return of the Shadow. I'm not 100% sure though. Could also be Lost Road and other writings or something like this, but I'm most likely Return of the Shadow, which is a book about how he created the Fellowship of the Ring and so on. Or Christopher Tolkien explains and reconstructs and shows old notes and drafts he worked on and so on. Really interesting stuff. And there we find, for example, that the old willow, the tree, had an evil ghost. That's also in some of the poems a little bit mentioned, I think. Kind of interesting. But also very complex, because a lot of sources and very different books in states that were not intended to be ever published. That makes reading them, of course, possible, but understanding the context and the development makes it more complex than just reading about Tom Bombadil in The Lord of the Rings. Yeah, I think in the exactly in the films there is the necklace related to the wife of Thranduil or something like this. The problem is in the books, a wife of Thranduil is never mentioned, but he has a son, so he must have a wife, I guess. But we don't know anything about her, what happened to her. I think that is a thing that's not really explored, which is unusual for this, and shows that Legolas also and Thranduil are very late characters that came late into it, because they're not that developed. If we compare this to, for example, Elrond, you might not have guessed it, but he's a very old character. There are sources from, I think, 1918 or 1926, I'm not sure, but far before The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings were created, there was Elrond. And in the in the later versions from 1926 or 30s, he is actually a Numenorean king. And then later, because he appears as an elf lord in The Hobbit, he can't be a king of Numenor. As a result, he had to create a second Elrond, which became then Elros, his twin brother. And he became the first king of Numenor. But it's really fascinating. I can't remember the dates though, if it was in 26 or in the 30s when he wrote the Numenorean king. But the early drafts that he is the son of Eärendil and of Elwing, and the story of Elwing was also a bit different back in the day. There was one version where she dies, and then she gets rescued, and I think also how she's transformed back from Swan to elf. There was also like a different version of that, if I remember correctly. Really complicated topic. A lot of different versions Tolkien worked once on. Oh, single autocorrect. Yeah. I thought you would mention this, mean this. Could you talk a bit about Tolkien's writing and his views on allegories and how he avoided them? Also, Gigi writes, we will quiz you until you tell us to stop. Yeah, we'll probably end the stream at some point, but we can keep going for a little bit. Just drink something really quick. Yeah. Oh, allegories. That is a complicated topic. So Tolkien was not a fan of those, it seems, and he mentions it often in his letters. And if people start to make conclusions and interpretations, and does a ring stay for, I don't know, the atomic bomb or something in World War II or whatever, he usually disagrees with it strongly. You can still make those conclusions, or say he was inspired by this event, or you interpret it this way, because when you most of the time you read a book and maybe you like it, you close it, but you don't go into deep research how it was created and what letters and what so on the author wrote and maybe never intended to publish and so on. However, yeah, in this case you can actually do this, and we know that Tolkien didn't like those comparisons. There's also like the comparison that I made a video about Tom Bombadil, and a bit sad that I didn't include it. I decided against it because I feel like Tom Bombadil is such a weird character that there are a lot of theories and interpretations going on. But there are some interpretations where Tolkien said that they are not the case. But I did not want in the video to say, no, people who have this interpretation in particular and like this one, you are wrong. That's not my approach, what I wanted to do. But one of the interpretations you often read, and I was surprised how often it came up, was that Eru is Tom Bombadil, or Bombadil is Eru, or an aspect of him. And that was one of the, because he says something that is close to the Bible and is related to God. However, this was also brought up to Tolkien, and there's a letter where he flat out says, no, that is definitely 100% not the case. And he went into detail. Tolkien was pretty awesome in that regard. You wrote him a letter as a fan, or as somebody who liked his work, and he took the time to answer you really in detail your questions. That was really fascinating about this man, and good that we all have all those letters today. Really awesome. However, yeah, Tolkien was then against it, and this is often the case in many aspects of the books. And for us creators, it's often a good excuse to say no. That is, we don't have to look into some complex topics then. That's a good excuse, I feel, sometimes, when it comes to allegories. And how he avoided them. I think you see he was inspired by mythology and a lot of things going on in the past of Europe. Not a lot of Norse mythology, we find Greek mythology in it. There's some, maybe not to mythology itself, but also some references to ancient Egypt, etc. There are multiple inspirations for Tolkien. There's also, I've always forgot his name though. There's a book, not a series, but a book that Tolkien, or an author that Tolkien was influenced by. Maybe he, also in English, he had the title, I think it was a Lord. Let me just see if I find it. Oh boy, that influences. Let me just see if I find it really quick. Always, I can't remember the name. It's so bad sometimes with real world names, because my mind is just so full with maybe what another. It was like I can't find it. Philology, mythology, history, modern literature. There's some. Let me check chat. Maybe somebody knows who knows what he's talking about. No, nobody seems to know. Ah, boy, unfortunate. I can't remember the name. I also looked into this at one point, and was fascinating. But I simply can't remember the name. Not even the letter. That's what bothers me the most. It's like also an early fantasy thing. But I can't come up with a name. Maybe a topic for another video, I think. Or maybe I missed it up and it was an influence for his friend who wrote Narnia, Mr. Lewis. Maybe I mix them up. It's also possible. I can't even remember the title of the book. That's the biggest problem. It would be so easy if I just knew how the book was called. Yeah, whatever. I simply can't come up with it. Maybe somebody knows. And yeah, as a result, George MacDonald, Tennyson, yeah, the multiple things that you find. There are a lot of influences for Tolkien, though. And as a result, you also can draw parallels to history, to the life of Tolkien himself. And that is, of course, the reason why those allegories work. So I wouldn't say he protected himself. You can always, like, humans are very good at recognizing patterns and compare them to other patterns that they have in their mind. So if you abstract a story far enough, you can of course compare them to other stories. If you abstract them far, if you zoom far enough out, everything becomes a dot, and then you can say, oh, that's a dot and that's a dot, and they are similar, even though in detail and their structure they are very different. You know what I mean, I think. But the further you abstract, the more comparable things can become. You can't avoid this at all. The question is when it becomes obvious, or if it was intended or not. It seems like in Tolkien's case, of course, he was influenced by the world wars. His history. Human is often the sum of, the sum of his experiences and of his memories. It's a big part of, not the only, but a big part of what a human is. And at least in my opinion. And of course, if you make creative work, a part of yourself also is reflected in this work. A part of Tolkien is reflected in his work. As a result, a part of his past is reflected in his book. So he can't really protect that. People draw conclusions there, putting one and one together and seeing, okay, he had in World War I, he was a soldier, he experienced this. Maybe this was a way for him to overcome the horrors of war and what do you say in English? You know what I mean, though. To process the his experiences there. Definitely possible, but it's not meant as an allegory. I think an allegory has like somewhat of an maybe that's wrong though, but one part of an allegory could be a very intentional thing, that the author intends to make an allegory, to write something that you can put to an event or whatever of reality, and maybe he can criticize it this way, or he can give an interesting point of view on it, just hiding it under a story, so people understand the point better. And yeah, of course, that happens to some degree in Lord of the Rings too, I guess. But some of the very, very concrete conclusions to World War II, to World War I, to Christianity, that are maybe sometimes a bit much, in my opinion. And of course, you can't protect it, and it's totally fair to make those assumptions. But of course, it's also fair, I guess, for people answering questions to say, yeah, it's too much allegory, and Tolkien probably didn't intend this. That gives sometimes allows some shortcuts in argumentation. I feel often might be the case, but it's not wrong to do this though. It's just Tolkien seemed to be not liking them, and as a result, you will hear people often say this, that Tolkien was not the intention of him, maybe a coincidence, that you can compare those in real world event and a structure of the story, or an event in the story with each other. But there's probably then as a result, no deeper meaning behind it. I didn't quite phrase the question the way I would like, but it's a really complex topic. I agree. I hope I could. It's complicated. I like to say a lot because it's always true. It's especially true if you talk about the First Age. Like, the First Age is really complicated. It's always like when I have to do a video and I have to talk about the First Age, I know, it will be a long video because it's always just insanely complex. So many connections you have to understand everything. If you make a video and you assume that the viewer you're making the video for, or there are viewers that don't know the lore as good as you do, and don't know, it's of course fun for them to understand all the connections, but then I have to explain all what happened in the past and explain those connections. That makes, of course, things difficult. Asking again a question when you skipped ahead, can you settle a debate between me and my daughter about how to pronounce... I already answered this, I think. Maybe you haven't heard it. If not, answer again. Or write this again if you haven't heard my answer. But it should be, depending on how you pronounce it, it's either, if you pronounce it Old Norse, it's Gloin. If you, 2 syllables. If you anglicize it, it's Gloin. And it's, in my opinion, in this case, fair to anglicize it. But you can make an argument for both, and I think nothing is wrong. But the name is definitely taken from the Edda, which is written in Old Norse. So the name, if you pronounce it Old Norse, it's Gloin. Gloin. It's difficult. O and I have also a strong indication to form a diphthong. Let's put it that way. Who is the most powerful among the Maiar? Eonwe? Arien? Eonwe is the leader. How is the other Maiar, basically the female counterpart of Eonwe, called? Something with an I. Not Ilma. It was something different. Eonwe, let me just check. Ilmare is the name. Exactly. I was right there. Ilmare. Yeah. They are the leaders of the Maiar, so I assume they are Maiar listen to them. As a result, they are powerful. Sauron is, of course, a very powerful Maiar. Gothmog, probably, but not at least as a warrior. The Balrogs as Maiar are also very powerful. When it comes to wisdom, Gandalf is considered to be one of the wisest of the Maiar, of course. Then we have Arien. She is the one who guards, basically, or carries the vessel where the sun is in, so she guards the sun through the sky, which makes her, in my opinion, automatically very powerful. Osse, that is a Maiar of Ulmo. He, for example, brought up the island of Numenor from the ground, because Ulmo said he should do this. In my opinion, makes him also quite powerful. We have also Melian, who is... was the most skilled Maiar when it comes to enchantment. And also she taught the nightingales to sing. So in a way, I would assume she's also very powerful. She had this girdle. We know a lot about her, and she definitely changed the fate of the world. She's definitely mentioned among those Maiar more powerful. Who's the most? Hard to say. I don't know, there's probably no right answer, but I guess Eonwe and Ilmare are good starting points, because the Maiar have to listen to them. Hello, all my fellow Tolkien philosophers. Nice. Would it be great if the Amazon Lord of the Rings series was actually an adaptation of Lord of the Rings? I hope the Second Age first season is only a preamble of the future seasons. That would be interesting, like a series. It's a good idea. I have to admit, though, I really like to see the Second Age, and a lot of it, because I think the idea is pretty cool, and I really like the Second Age. But sure, that would be great. I would also like a series in the Third Age. I know, or in the First Age, especially the First Age. I guess I like all the ages, but yeah, that would be pretty cool too. Like it. Coin, yeah, exactly. That's a good word. Coin. It's one syllable. Yeah. So you also read my comment. I recognize here. Yeah. The name. So yeah, it's if you pronounce coin Old Norse, it's coin. Probably weird. Sauron Anatar. Ungoliant had your master and I mean, Ungoliant is also a very powerful being. You have to give her credit, at least. Definitely, Glowin, Oin. Yeah, it's always two syllables if you pronounce it Old Norse. I think there is not. Maybe there's one exception or that for them. I'm just not right now able to go through all the names in my head and see if there's a difference there. But since there are not that many diphthongs, O and I and A and long A and I are not a diphthong. I think E and I are a diphthong in Old Norse. And E and Y and so on. What is the other one? I forgot the other one already. I just like the allegory in all of its manifestation. Well, sometimes it can be interesting to have an allegory, at least when it must be intended. Yeah, we have here the name list. Yeah, there it is. That's the name. Lord Dunsany, or I think it's pronounced right. Really bad with pronouncing English names if I have to read them. That's the curse of not being a native speaker, I think. Yeah. Really, that's a really interesting guy who wrote, what was his story written there? He wrote some interesting stories. Definitely need to look further into this. Yeah, the time and the gods and so on, the gods of Fëanor. Maybe he's also more influenced, not for Tolkien, but for Lovecraft. Maybe I'm mixing things up here. But yeah, that is definitely Leaf by... I think it's definitely Allegory. Yeah. Was there only one Goblin King? Can't remember if there are others. Oh, that's also a fascinating question. I think there's only one mentioned. However, in some weird History of Middle-earth note published, some note of Tolkien published in some History of Middle-earth books, there was potentially an orc that was a Maiar, maybe, and that's not canon though, in my opinion, but he was a Maiar that took the form of an orc. And as a result, he could have been considered like king or something, but I don't know. Goblins and orc are basically the same. Tolkien in The Hobbit, Tolkien calls them mostly goblins, and in The Lord of the Rings he calls them mostly orcs. He also mentioned this in one of the letters that it's that way. Can't tell you out of my head which one, but yeah. And yeah, because usually they are under Sauron or under Morgoth, and he says what they have to do. The Hobbit, as said earlier, is a bit strange. Like it has some fairy tale character here and there, and some really interesting ideas and mentions mentioning some interesting things in some sentences. The Goblin King and Goblin Town is definitely one of the weirder things, I think, or not weird, but unusual things in The Hobbit. So yeah, there's only, to my knowledge, one goblin. Wait, no, I'm lying. maybe somebody should protest here. There is another Orc king. Let me just look it up. I remember his name. Yeah. Golfimbul. Forgot about them. There is a story of how golf was invented, and Bull Roarer cut off the head, and then golf somehow was invented, if I remember correctly. There was like an orc raid coming down, attacking the Shire, and then the hobbits had to fight. And Bull Roarer led them, and these orcs were also led by a king, by Golfimbul. That was 3rd Age, 2747. I can read it here. I forgot about that one. I think besides that one, I can't remember any one. Do we think we will see Elros in the Amazon series? I think we will. That would be pretty cool. That would be indeed pretty cool. Yeah, exactly. It was Dunsany. Lord Dunsany. That was a name I was in the mind. Now I recognize it. Yeah, thanks for the hint. I don't know why I couldn't find it that fast. When Frodo hears Gandalf's voice atop of Armin Moor, is that just in his head? Also cell phone action between the rings. Maybe cell phone action between the rings. That's a good question. Yeah, probably Oriana's Winter is remembered probably of that story. Yeah, he was also an Orc king. I assume yes. It was probably in his head. My answer. I would have to look into the exact passage again, if I'm honest. So can't give you a really good answer here. But I assume. I mean, Gandalf. We talked about this in Gandalf's Power episode of my book analysis series. That there was definitely some telepathic abilities that Gandalf possessed and could use. He could read other person's mind, and he could communicate with Elrond and Galadriel on their way back to Mislon to leave Middle Earth. There was like a passage where they sat there and they didn't need to talk a word. They could just communicate through their minds. And I assume, that this is for sure possible for Gandalf there. I wonder if Tolkien ever wrote Lovecraft. I doubt it though. Yeah, I doubt it too, but true. Yeah. Confirmed that already. Thank you for the name. That is exactly Lord Dunsany. We talked about the Elros thing. Yeah, I think he will appear. Would appreciate it. I can show it to you. There's a really cool picture of Jenny Dolphin. It's a really powerful picture, in my opinion. It's a bit sad though. Probably know it if you. It's also on Tolkien Gateway if you look on the Elros page. It's this one here. It's a really sad one though. It shows Elrond and Elros. It's not clear if they have ever met at this age again. I would have to look into this because I can't remember. I haven't done the research on this part for the video yet. Completely. Like I would look into the question: how often did the elves visit Numenor? Do we have information? I think that was rarely, because the first 800 years or so, elves men did not leave Numenor because they had no ship technology researched in their tech tree, so to say. It took them some time, or 600 years. I don't know the exact number, but I know that it was something around this in this ballpark. And as a result, of course, I'm not sure how often the elves traveled to Numenor from Middle-earth. That I don't know. So maybe it's not possible that this ever happened and they never saw each other again, which is also really sad. But it's a really, really great picture. I really like the idea behind it. Oh, thank you. Listening to me all the night before I sleep. For all the lore. Yeah, no problem. Happy you enjoy this. Happy you are here and enjoy my video content. There will be more soon, I hope. And for me personally, it would sound terrifying to listen to myself every night, but still surprised that people enjoy it. But it seems people really like my stuff, and I appreciate that a lot. Really, thank you. Son's daughter. Oh, that's right. Okay, I think we are almost through, right? I almost caught up with chat. And people are still listening, which surprises me greatly. Take off the ring. Frodo's here. Fool, take off the ring. Yeah. Some smartphone shenanigans going on there. So yeah, that was a lot. How long is the stream now? 3.5 hours? Okay, that's definitely has to be it for today. I feel like I answered some questions today. I hope I hope I answered all the questions so far, or maybe I skipped a few. Sorry for that. You think Sam met Frodo when he went to Valinor? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, happy you liked this. That was over 3.5 hours of pure lore discussion, with some bit of philology thrown into the mix for good measure. And yeah, I definitely want or plan to end it now. Even though there might be more questions, but this won't be the last stream. Like I said, yeah, it's really impressive. 3.5 hours. At least my OBS clock says 3.5 hours. Maybe it's not. It's around that time. Probably OBS ran like 15 minutes before I actually pressed on go online. But that should not be any problem, right? Yeah, thank you, much appreciated. I'm happy that people like it, and some people will probably watch this in the VOD. The biggest Palantir on Tol Eressëa, so the elf could chat with the Numenoreans. Thanks for the stream. Yeah, exactly. I think it's the biggest one, even though I'm not sure if the later Osgiliath stone would be bigger. I would need to look into this. I'm not 100% sure on this. Maybe there's even not a mention that compares that size. You're the best. Thank you. Shoot, I'm late. And I had a question about double dwarf. Okay, I was to wrap up the stream, but now I'm curious. But I can't promise that I know the answer. What is double dwarf? It sounds like fun game. Great stream. It's a shame I could only catch the end of it. Yeah, the time zones can be annoying for some people. I know. It's really, really difficult. Like, I'm in the middle of the time zones. So the people east from me, for them it's now very early in the morning, and the people west of me, it's getting evening now, and for me it's almost bedtime now. So it's a really difficult situation. But there's a VOD available on my channel, I think right after this. And sorry, bad joke. Yes, it sounds like a game. Dumbledore meaning bumblebee. I mean, there's the word door in it that it appears quite often in Tolkien's word. Dumbledores, Tolkien Gateway. Okay, yeah, were a legendary, ferocious race of winged insects mentioned in the only in the Hobbit verse. The Dumbledores were said to have battled a knight on a quest. Yeah, that's the power of the Hobbit. There's some really weird stuff in it. So yeah, you are right. But I could have not answered that out of my head, to be honest. I really need to study the Hobbit at some point, I feel. Let me see. Maybe it's only in a thing outside of, I don't know. But there's a lot of weird stuff. There's also like a desert mentioned in the east, I think past the Urukani. But past the Urukani should be a coast, not a desert, but who knows, right? Difficult topic. I've been here since 70s. I very much appreciate all you bring to the subject and your calm patience you show to us. And no problem. I really enjoy answering questions and interacting with chat a bit, even though I sometimes feel sometimes a bit how to say it. Yeah, I'm sometimes surprised simply that people listen to my ramblings here, but Tolkien is just a great passion for a lot of people, and they're interested in it, and it happens that I know a thing or two, even though there are people more knowledgeable than I am, and maybe I said some parts that are probably wrong in some areas, or if you look at it precisely, I should have worded it differently. That's very difficult sometimes, because there's just so much, and you lose track of things or remember things wrong. Good morning from Australia. Well, good morning. Good night from Germany. Yeah. I feel sister for having been here. Sister smarter for being here. That's a little ironic, isn't it? I just thought your sister's also really into law, and we're conversing about this with you. Middle English, I think. Nope, Old English. Yeah, that's... Yeah, probably has an Old English. I think let's see. Etymology. Dumbledore is an obsolete English word for bumblebee. Interesting. And we learned something again. Thank you for looking this up. So, yeah, I think I wrap it up now. But, crazy as I am, probably not thinking about this. I actually think about continuing a bit of playing Cyberpunk on Twitch, but I'm not sure if that's a good idea, because it would become really late. So probably I go to bed instead. But I'm thinking about it for a moment when I end the stream. So, yeah, there's that. Again, shoutouts to all the artists. So there is a problem with the artists that I can't fit them in one Nightbot message. So we only showed Kimberly, Ted Nasmith, and Jenny Dolphin art here, and Sara Morello one. One artwork was from her. These are the links to her. Jenny Dolphin also sells art books and so on. He has a store on Etsy. Its link is in the description if you're interested to this. Also, I think Sara Morello does commissions and so on. Ted Nasmith, I don't know if he does commissions. Maybe. Probably not. Probably busy. Kimberly, I think rarely does commissions, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not 100% sure, though. She's difficult to contact, though, in case people really love her work. And then there are more artists that don't fit into this, so I have a different command for this, I think. Maybe it doesn't work. Or I mistyped. Come on, Nightbot, don't let me down. There it is. Nightbot is really late here. Yeah, the art is absolutely amazing. I agree. So Laura Tolkien, she had he had some interesting art style, and I usually show stuff with a Balrog fighting Glorfindel. And Glorfindel himself has a nice artwork for him, and so on. Benef and Niati, that were probably the two first artists who ever gave me permission to use their work. Niati has a cool artwork of the what is it called? The Two Trees of Valinor. I can show it to you in the background maybe. So we can end on an artful note with a lot of shoutouts here, even though she has not that much Lord of the Rings artwork, I have to admit. But that one I really like. I was so happy that somebody gave me finally permission to use the works in my videos. So I'm always thankful to Niati and Benef. Benef also has like a cool artwork for the Two Trees, and also another one that's I rarely use, but I really like it. It's also an interesting art style, I have to admit. Let me just see where he is. So we can just look at some art for getting out. Avalon, that's the name of the place. I really like that one. It's rarely used though, but it's great nonetheless. That's by Benef, by Frederic Bennett. I think he's from Canada. He also works like as a game. He also works as a game, as an artist for games. I think he, for example, did some artwork for Deus Ex, Human Revolution, and so on. So pretty nice. He has also some artworks. I'm not sure if he's active on his DeviantArt anymore, but yeah, usually we know the. There it is. Usually we know him from this artwork here. Let me just bring it up in the background. I used it often in my videos. I also really like that. Also, it was a question I answered in a moment. Just let me do the production stuff here, which is not easy doing this on the fly. This one here, probably have seen it in my videos a million times. I really like that one too. Like we see Tilperion and Laurelin slowly fades out of business because they, I think a day, every 6 hours they switch or something like this. And a day has only 12 hours in these times. Something like this. Well, who else do we have? Peter Macri is new, has also some interesting artworks. Haven't used his works that much yet, but probably will at some point. Pretty nice, and yeah, I guess Ted Nasmith, and needs no further explanation. Also, Jenny Dolphin's art is just amazing. Use the map I showed. So this map here, that's the Second Age map. Sorry for the arrow there, forgot to hide it. This map is also... Wait, there's the thing missing. This map is from Amazon for the Lord of the Rings on Prime show. That is one of the maps they released with Numenor, hinting at, oh, that must be in the Second Age then, because Numenor only appears in the Second Age. You also see it here. And I have one community member who is also a mod, but he's sadly not available this evening, so he's not in chat. And one of my mods has called Mordo. He edited this map. And I don't know how he did it exactly, but he put in some effort, and he made this map out of it, which also has Beleriand in it. I can maybe zoom in a bit so you can see it better if you want. That is it's really useful for me, because I always used in the past the lordoftheringsproject.com. Shoutouts to this site too. But it's of course nicer to have like a higher resolution map where you can zoom in a lot and so on. That's just very, very helpful. But yeah, this map here has interestingly Beleriand in it, and he made it basically out of I think particles of the other map and just expanded it and edited it, and it's fantastic. Really helpful. Yeah, it's really brilliant. I think it's basically done out of cut out stuff from the main map. That's only the third age, and really, really great. I'm really thankful to this. So shout outs to you, Kierdan. Thank you for your fantastic work. And yeah, it's really, really fantastic. I don't usually need the name for my videos because I put in the red big name thing anyway while editing, so people can read it even on smaller screens. That's my intention. Sometimes the line is hard to see, but there's always something not working out. Yeah, and this also shows like the connection between the old and the new stuff. When this Beleriand part just vanishes inside the ocean. It's really brilliant, I agree. I'm sure it's his map and he allowed me to use it, so you need to ask him, I guess. In case you have Discord, you can come to the Discord of us and ask him. He's active there. Or maybe in chat next stream when he might be there. Not sure if you published them, but he sent them to me and it was really, really helpful for me. I can definitely say this. Even though Lord of Rings project, I have Lord of Rings project available too. That also has a third age map and a map with Beleriand, which is also fantastic. It also names, and you can see the passes where people traveled and so on. Also pretty helpful and neat. Let me just see if I can bring it up on the screen really quick. I think I can, yeah. There it is. That's the Lord of Rings project thing. You can zoom in a bit, and yeah, that's the Beleriand, that's the third age map. And if you click on Beleriand, you have the first age part of Beleriand here. Pretty nice. So all the places, very helpful. Let me just switch it back. And yeah, really, really great. I mean, in of itself, it's great that the fandom of Tolkien is big enough that people actually make those works. Like, look at all these amazing artworks we have around the world from so many different artists and different styles. And that in of itself, people make swords, people, I don't know, make cosplays. And of course, people also make those amazing maps. That's really fantastic. Really appreciate this a lot, and yeah, I can make some lore videos with those. So yeah, enough chatting for now. There is a problem now, I think. There is a huge problem. I feel a bit bad about. I didn't think about that. So I have, of course, a credit sequence for the end of the stream now prepared to give shoutouts to all the people. That's also part of subbing here, that you get like appear in the credits. I have, though, not rendered the new additions yet into the credits scene, so probably I have to do this really fast. The problem is, I'm not sure if I can do this really fast in the background. Just render out the thing there. I could try, though. So I just need to keep talking a bit about things that might come up while I try to manage editing this sequence at the end. Because I really appreciate that people subscribed here. That is really, really awesome for me. Much, much appreciated. Only need to be doing things. How does it work? Yeah, I probably can't do this on the fly as fast. I mean, one name is already in the list anyway. That's Oriana's Winter. Okay, that works. It looks a bit cluttered probably if I render it now, but that's the best I can do this fast. Just need to find one more name. Oh boy. Doing editing live on stream, probably not a good idea. No, too many people subscribed. I need to move everything down a bit. So, just a moment. It's not perfect, but I'll take it. Now let's kill my computer with rendering a video in the background. Maybe it works. Maybe not, and I'm sorry. Then it's correct in the next stream or video or whatever. Let me just do this. Can only take a moment because I have to overwrite a file for this and stuff. Oh, it's so complicated. It's far too complicated to do this in the background. Had we do it anyway. So I'm working on the Elrond video too. That will be up in the next week, I hope. Maybe at the end of next week. No promise though, because like longer videos often take unpredictable amounts of time. And as a result, yeah, it's hard to say when it's done. It's done when it's done, soon TM. But that will be most likely, if nothing out of the ordinary happens, the next video that I release on my channel. Look forward to that. Probably be a cool video. I'm definitely interested in how it will turn out. And yeah, tomorrow I stream on Twitch, most likely. Maybe I can't stream tomorrow on Twitch. It depends on some stuff, but yeah, we will see. Still playing Cyberpunk 2077. And okay, I got it. Maybe it works now. So enough talking for now. And I would say shout outs to all your people here. We can wait. Great. Still surprised that some people are left. So now the thing happens. I shut up for a moment. I wish you, nice or great Easter holidays for those people who have them. I know that the Orthodox don't have it at the beginning of May, so they have to wait a little bit for Easter. But to those who already can celebrate this, and I hope you have a good time. And I would say that's all there's left to say. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you for listening, for watching, wherever you are. Shoutouts to all the artists, shoutouts to all the people supporting me, watching here, asking questions, being active in chat, much appreciated. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.